Chapter 778. Outside Yingzhou Immortal Mountain. Lin Feng looked at the immortal mountain below, and the strange feeling in his heart intensified. I keep feeling that something is hidden in the mountain. Unfortunately, although the illusion of the immortal mountain's core was broken, the connection between the immortal mountain and Yinghai world was still there, causing Yingzhou Immortal Mountain to be shrouded in a thin layer of mist. If he did not investigate, Lin Feng would not be able to see through the hidden secrets. Emperor Qin Stonefeather and Emperor Zhou Liangpan had the same feeling. Slowly, the momentum of the Grand Imperial Palace and Immortal Dragon City was rising. It was the same on Lin Feng's side. The balance of the three sides was becoming more and more fragile. The primeval Lord of Heaven is already close to Penglai Immortal Mountain. Lin Feng's heart moved slightly. His gaze was calm and deep. At this moment, in the southern area of Yingzhou Immortal Mountain, a speck of light that was as small as a speck of dust was traversing through the white clouds above the sea. The speck of light suddenly paused and stopped. The speck of light rapidly expanded and turned into many black and white talismans. In the middle of the talismans, there was a huge figure. It stood in the void as if it could support the sky. It was more than a kilometer tall. This giant's clothes fluttered in the wind, wearing a wide robe with wide sleeves. His outer appearance was exactly the same as Lin Feng himself. His facial features were also the same as Lin Feng. It was just that no matter if it was his clothes or skin, they all seemed to be composed of gas. The gas was sometimes clear and sometimes turbid, as if it was showing the beginning of creation. This giant was called the Primeval Lord of Heaven. It was a magical avatar condensed by Lin Feng's Primeval Heaven opening technique. It was also the strongest avatar that Lin Feng could manifest at the moment. Manifesting the Primeval Lord of Heaven would cause Lin Feng to be unable to use the Primeval Heaven opening technique, Great Sun Divine Fist, Boundless Sea technique, and other magical arts. However, its battle prowess was also above the avatars of the Great Sun Emperor and the Infinite Ocean Emperor. When Lin Feng was facing off against Liangpan and Stonefeather, this avatar could help him carry out his plan to search for Mount Penglai. There was a small light spot on the Primeval Lord of Heaven's forehead. It was the heavenly scarlet golden pearl. At this moment, the pearl was flashing a faint purple light that was getting stronger. Oh, I'm getting closer and closer to Mount Penglai. Lin Feng's mind and consciousness were connected with Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning. He knew that under the guidance of the Scorpio Golden Bead, he was not in the wrong place. At the same time, the rumor that Mount Penglai was located in the south of Yingxi was true. Suddenly, the light of the Scorpio Golden Bead became blazing, but it was not as strong as when it brushed past Mount Penglai. Lin Feng came to a realization. Yingzhou is in the northeast of Yinghai. If it's not Penglai, then it must be the Fangzhong Immortal Mountain that has fallen into the Great Zhou dynasty. The numerous black and white talismans surrounding the Heavenly Lord of Primordial Beginning combined again. With a flash of light, the huge Primordial Spirit Lord of Heaven's Dharmakaya was put away. It became a drop in the ocean again, like a speck of dust floating in the air. The yin and yang dust was the result of Lin Feng's continuous deduction of the third chapter of the Tao Te Ching, the yin and yang chapter, and the process of breaking through to the Void Return Realm. The spell itself was still in an incomplete state. This spell would only be perfected after Lin Feng truly reached the Void Return Realm and created the yin and yang chapter of the Tao Te Ching. However, it could be used now. At the same time, the appearance of this spell was like building a bridge for Lin Feng to reach the Void Return Realm and create the yin and yang chapter of the Tao Te Ching. He benefited a lot. In the next moment, the void above the ocean shook violently, but nothing could be seen. It felt as if an invisible giant had passed by. Fangzhong Immortal Mountain. Lin Feng looked at this scene silently and shook his head with a smile. The Great Zhou dynasty had really sent out all their powerhouses this time. They regarded the Battle of Yinghai as a battle that would determine their country's fate. Liangpan led the Grand Imperial Palace to seize Yingzhou Immortal Mountain, while Fangzhong Immortal Mountain was in charge of Penglai. Zhu Hongwu was probably on the mountain. The Great Zhou dynasty, which already had an immortal mountain, was indeed equivalent to having half a home field in Yinghai. They were using the mysterious connection between Fangzhong Immortal Mountain and Penglai Immortal Mountain to try and find Penglai Immortal Mountain. Lin Feng drove the yin and yang dust with the primeval Lord of Heaven's Dharma body, and headed in the same direction. He thought to himself, if this is the case, I'm afraid I won't be able to reach Penglai Immortal Mountain before them. Just as he was thinking, Lin Feng suddenly felt the Fangzhong Immortal Mountain hidden in the layers of smoke and clouds shake violently. The white smoke and clouds were suddenly dyed gold. Between the rolling golden clouds and mist, a large amount of dazzling light flickered, and the spatial boundaries kept twisting. From the golden light, an incomparably huge square immortal mountain suddenly rushed out. The vast golden light dispersed all the white smoke and clouds around it. As soon as the immortal mountain appeared, the core hall gathered endless light and transformed into a dark golden Tianqin Abbot mysterious light. It shot straight in one direction. Wherever the dark golden light passed, the space was annihilated and turned into nothingness. Lin Feng thought he had been exposed, but he saw that the Tianqin Abbot mysterious light's target was not him. In the direction of the Tianqin Abbot mysterious light's attack, a figure appeared in the void. He smiled and said, "Looks like I've followed too closely." As he spoke, he put his palms together, and the Buddha's light shone around him. It condensed into a giant ancient Buddha in the sky. It was pure gold and emitted a blue light. The ancient Buddha sat on a throne carried by 8 elephants. He held a Vajra scepter and a bell. It was the immovable Buddha's Dharma body. Then, the immovable Buddha's Dharma body chanted softly, and a golden light ball appeared in front of him. There seemed to be a pure land in the light ball that was filled with true joy. Those who were born in the land would no longer regress or mutate. This was the pure land obtained from cultivating the immovable Buddha scripture. It was called the pure land of joy. It could realize the knowledge accumulation and transform anger and worry into true joy. There was no fear or hesitation. Because of the nature of anger, one could achieve the omniscient mirror. The figure was a handsome young monk dressed in gray. His Dharma cultivation level was above monk Zhiguang's. The pure land of joy that was manifested was much larger and more complete than the pure land of victory that was activated by monk De Kong in the illusion of Yingzhou Fairy Mountain. The golden light ball expanded and completely transformed into a pure land world. It was unmoving and fearless as it faced the attack of the Tianqin Abbot mysterious light. At the same time, the young monk in gray raised his right hand and made a clenched fist gesture. The immovable Buddha's Dharma body in the sky above his head did the same. Instantly, a strong and unshakable force that controlled the past and future, and resided in the eternal void was revealed. It was the strongest protective martial arts divine power from the immovable Buddha scripture, the immovable King Buddha's body. The immovable King Buddha's body and the pure land of joy appeared at the same time, and forced the Tianqin Abbot mysterious light to hit a wall. It was like waves hitting a reef. No matter how powerful the attack was, it would not budge. It would laugh as it smashed into pieces in front of it. In the hall of Fangzhong Fairy Mountain, Emperor Liang Pan's clone silently looked at the young monk in gray in front of him. "Master Golden Cicada, we parted ways in a hurry previously. Are you in a hurry to leave now?" The young monk in gray by the name of Golden Cicada smiled. "I'm afraid I can't leave this time. Once I leave, Penglai Fairy Mountain will fall into the hands of Great Zhou," Liang Pan said. "If that's the case, then stay and reminisce. During the Battle of the Tempest Temple, Golden Cicada, you were not there. Not only me, but everyone who participated in the battle felt regretful." Golden Cicada put his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha. "This is the fruit of my sin, but I have implicated the people of the Tempest Temple." In the hall of Fangzhong Fairy Mountain, Zhu Hongwu stood below Liang Pan and said silently, "Golden Cicada, you were a coward back then and refused to show yourself. Now you've come out to stir up trouble again. Don't you feel ashamed?" Golden Cicada calmly looked at the immortal mountain of Fangzhong. His gaze seemed to cross the endless void and meet Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu's eyes in the main hall of the immortal mountain. "My Buddha is merciful and does not give birth to anger, ignorance, hatred, or anger. However, he also has the Vajra exorcism technique. All karma will be settled one day. Isn't the lotus flower tongue a Buddhist method?" Liang Pan smiled. "But I agree. There is no need to quarrel with me." As he spoke, Fangzhong Fairy Mountain suddenly shook. In the vasting sea, There seemed to be countless transparent rune chains reaching out from the void and connecting to Fangzhong Fairy Mountain. Each side of the huge squarish immortal mountain was 2,500 kilometers long. It was completely enveloped by a dark golden light. This dark golden light extended along the countless transparent chains, causing these chains to also be plated with a layer of dark gold. Then the surrounding world turned dark gold. The great path of heaven and earth trembled, and countless runes and divine lights emerged. It was as if a world was crying out. The entire sea seemed to have merged with Fangzhong Fairy Mountain, as it pressed down on Golden Cicada. When Lin Feng saw this scene, he nodded to himself. This is Fangzhong Fairy Mountain's strongest state. Using the power of the Sea to suppress the enemy is something that most third-tier essence soul cultivators can't withstand. This is already close to the might of the Grand Imperial Palace or Immortal Dragon City. At that moment, Golden Cicada felt like he was alone. He was the enemy of the entire world, and could not be tolerated by the world. Even the pure land of joy and the immovable King Buddha body were trembling slightly. Golden Cicada sighed. It's a pity that this penniless monk has never cultivated the complete Vairocana Sutra. Otherwise, with all 5 Vairocana Sutras gathered, I can attempt to challenge the first tribulation with the Buddhist Dharma. I won't have to stop at the third-tier golden body like I am now. Although that was what he said, Golden Cicada's expression was calm. He was only a little regretful but not afraid. A cicada's cry suddenly rang out in the vast world. The cicada's cry was filled with the true meaning of Buddhist enlightenment. Only the deepest part of it contained a hint of mournfulness. Cicada, 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 cicada. After the cicada's cry, the entire void was filled with cicada cries. In an instant, the world seemed to be shaking. Everything was heading towards decline and decline. It was like moving from midsummer to late autumn. Everything was withering, the world was withering, and the great Tao was withering. Even Fangzhong Fairy Mountain, which was still awe-inspiring just a moment ago, seemed to be tainted with the color of decline and wind. Lin Feng, who was hidden in the Yinyang dust, and Liang Pan and Zhu Honggu, who were on Fangzhong Fairy Mountain, all had a strange glint in their eyes. Creation initial tribulation, completion tribulation, Dharma ending realm. Golden Cicada's calm voice was heard amidst the cicada's cry. In the past, when I cultivated the Buddhist Dharma, my demon body cultivation had already reached its end. There was light at the end of the tunnel, and I improved further. However, I didn't expect that after I came out of seclusion this time, my sect had already met with misfortune because of me. Chapter 779. Golden Cicada was still dressed like a young monk in gray. Silently he stood in the void, but the bright Buddhist light had dimmed. In the void above his head, the vague shadow of a huge autumn cicada appeared. Its size seemed to be even larger than the small landmass of Fangzhong Immortal Mountain. The appearance of the insect, after being magnified countless times, looked extremely terrifying and oppressive, even though it was filled with the Buddhist sense of freedom. Lin Feng, Liang Pan, Zhu Honggu, and the others naturally would not be affected by this. What they were concerned about was that there was a faint dark aura circling around the autumn cicada. Even Lin Feng and the others felt a great fear from the bottom of their hearts when they saw it. Lin Feng was no stranger to this power concept. The black chess piece of the Dharma ending game on Yujing Mountain had the same aura. The Dharma ending calamity, the aura of the Deva's 5 decrepit phenomena. This demon could also trigger the Dharma ending calamity. Lin Feng looked at Master Golden Cicada, silently listening to the cicada's cry. When this demon entered the Great Lane Monastery to learn Buddhism, the Mahavairocana Sutra had already been lost. Although he had tried to organize and collect it, it was still incomplete. As a result, his Dharma cultivation stopped at the peak of the 3rd tier of the Golden Body realm, and he did not dare to take another step forward. Because if he took this step, he would have to face the Dharma ending calamity, the Deva's 5 decrepit phenomena, that would make even primordial divinity experts pale. Humans had birth, old age, sickness, and death. Creation also had success, failure, and emptiness. Humans faced the great terror of death, but the world faced an even greater terror, the terror of the end of creation. As Lin Feng had been learning Tao for a long time, and his own cultivation had increased, His understanding of the world of creation also deepened. He corrected some of his previous misunderstandings and understood many things that he did not know before. Even a primordial divinity expert at the third tier of the Tao integration realm could do nothing in the face of the Dharma-ending calamity, the Deva's 5 decrepit phenomena. Once the Dharma-ending calamity struck them, they would die. The vast 1,000 worlds would eventually come to an end, and the world would come to an end. When the nest was overturned, no eggs would remain intact. No one would be spared. If one wanted to be indestructible and everlasting, one had to find a feasible path. That was how creation-grade magic treasures appeared. At the same time, countless powerful cultivators themselves constantly refined their Tao techniques, hoping to cross the sea of bitterness and surpass the shore. Human cultivators reached the third firmament of the essence soul realm, while demon great sages reached the third firmament of the indestructible demon soul realm. The path beyond that was the same. They had to improve themselves and attempt to transcend the 3 creation tribulations. According to the legends, the collapse of creation and the nirvana of heaven and earth were divided into 3 stages. The first stage was when all life, spiritual energy, matter, magic power, and everything that was born from the creation of the world would follow the world and experience the great tribulation of the 5 signs of decay. This tribulation was known as the creation initial tribulation, also known as the Dharma-ending tribulation or the 5 decaying of the heavens. The source of this calamity was the most mysterious of the 7 seas of heavenly origin, the Dead Sea. Unlike the Empty Sea, the Star Sea, and the Vast Sea, which were fixed foreign spaces, the Dead Sea was untraceable, yet it seemed to be everywhere. When a third-tier essence soul realm expert's cultivation reached a certain level, if he had enough confidence, he could communicate with the Dead Sea. Once the connection was established, he would receive the Dharma-ending tribulation. When the cultivator took the initiative to receive the Dharma-ending tribulation, he could not rely on other means to resist it, nor could he use the Dharma-ending tribulation. The Dharma-ending tribulation only targeted the person who initiated it, so it could not be used as a means of mutual destruction. When the Dharma-ending tribulation came, one could only rely on one's own cultivation to resist it. If one failed, one would die. Being able to resist it did not mean that everything was fine. The 5 decaying of the heavens would cause the cultivator to be in so much pain that he would want to die. He would search for all kinds of treasures and methods to eliminate the tribulation in order to recover. If one could resist the Dharma-ending tribulation without dying, one could say that the cultivator had reached the initial tribulation stage. The so-called initial tribulation stage meant that one could withstand one or more Dharma-ending tribulation without dying. However, after being damaged, one could not recover on their own, and needed to rely on external forces. In the process of withstanding the Dharma-ending tribulation again and again without dying, and gradually recovering, the cultivator would constantly improve his understanding of the Dharma-ending tribulation stage, eliminating loopholes and tempering his foundation. His magic power would also become stronger until he had completely passed the initial tribulation stage. The initial tribulation stage was not called a realm, but a process, a path. When the third-tier essence soul realm expert's strength reached a certain level, those who were confident could embark on this path until they could recover from the exhaustion caused by the Dharma-ending tribulation without relying on external forces. Then the tribulation stage would be considered completed, and the cultivator would reach the completion tribulation stage. Cultivators in the completion tribulation stage would still be injured by the Dharma-ending tribulation, and there was a limit to the number of times they could withstand the Dharma-ending tribulation. However, as long as they did not completely collapse, they could recover on their own within a certain period of time. At this stage, the cultivator could activate the Dharma-ending tribulation as a means of attack. However, at the same time, the cultivator would also suffer the same damage from the Dharma-ending tribulation. Therefore, the completion tribulation stage was also known as the Dharma-ending realm. The cultivators in the Dharma-ending realm were judged to be able to recover on their own within a certain period of time after withstanding the Dharma-ending tribulation. The second was that they could actively activate the Dharma-ending tribulation to attack others. Therefore, the cultivators in the Dharma-ending realm had different levels of cultivation. according to the difference in strength and Dharma art. The number of times they could withstand the Dharma-ending tribulation was also different. Some could only withstand 3 to 5 times, while others could withstand more. Even if they did not use the Dharma-ending tribulation as a means of attack to fight, there was still a difference in their magical powers and magic power. The magic treasures of creation could withstand different amounts of the Dharma-ending tribulation. At the same time, as long as the owner helped to refine them, they could recover within a certain period of time after withstanding the Dharma-ending tribulation. However, they could not actively activate it. However, the power of the magic treasures also varied. When facing a cultivator in the Dharma-ending realm, the outcome could only be determined after a real fight. Without using the Dharma-ending tribulation, the cultivators in the Dharma-ending realm could only rely on their own cultivation and magical powers to compete with the magic treasures of creation. If a cultivator activated the Dharma-ending tribulation, he would be competing with the magic treasures of creation to see who could withstand the Dharma-ending tribulation more times. In the past, in West Hill City, Lin Feng injured the immortal heaven sword with the black chess piece of the Dharma-ending game, forcing Xian Longxing to retreat with hatred. Although he did not know if Lin Feng had really reached the Dharma-ending realm, or if he had some special method to activate the Dharma-ending tribulation, the immortal heaven sword was too important to Shu Mountain. Therefore, Xian Longxing did not dare to bet on whether Lin Feng would reach the upper limit of his Dharma-ending tribulation first, or the immortal heaven sword would. Otherwise, given the character of this great sword cultivator, if he also reached the Dharma-ending realm, he would definitely fight to the death with Lin Feng to see who would give up first. Today's great master Golden Cicada, the Golden Cicada great sage of the past, did not dare to challenge the Dharma-ending tribulation with his Dharma cultivation because the 5 directions Buddha Sutra he cultivated was incomplete. However, his own demon Dharma cultivation had reached a higher level because of the Dharma-ending tribulation. He surpassed the 3rd tier of the indestructible demon soul, and successfully completed the Dharma-ending tribulation. Silently, Golden Cicada looked at Mount Fangzong and did not say much. The chirping of cicadas in the void had become one, as if this was the only sound left in the world. It was the endless, deafening chirping of cicadas. On Mount Fangzhong, Liang Pan looked at Zhu Hongwu and said calmly, "Hongwu, you may have to act earlier than originally planned." Zhu Hongwu replied, "I await your majesty's orders at any time." Liang Pan shook his head slightly. "If I were here, I could rely on Mount Fangzong and use the power of the Yingxi to fight with Golden Cicada." The countless dark golden rune chains on Mount Fangzong that were connected to the Yingxi were already gradually decaying amidst the cicadas' chirping. However, at this moment, Liang Pan used all his strength to activate Mount Fangzong and communicate with the Yingxi. The boundless dark golden light contracted together, and gradually turned into a ball of light. As time and space changed, its volume kept shrinking. Its power became more condensed, and the entire Yingxi seemed to be collapsing inwards with this ball of light as the center. The power of a creation world gradually appeared, like an independent world. Although it was not as profound as the Dharma-ending tribulation, its power was further enhanced, fighting against Golden Cicada's demon power. Great Master Golden Cicada, my Mount Fangzong has activated the power of the Yingxi. Although it is not a Dharma-ending tribulation, it has already surpassed the 3rd tier of the primordial soul realm. If you do not activate the Dharma-ending tribulation, I'm afraid you will not be able to break through the defense of the Mount Fangzhong. Liang Pan smiled slightly. "I wonder how many Dharma-ending tribulation you can withstand, Great Master?" There was something he did not say, but everyone present understood. If Golden Cicada activated the Dharma-ending tribulation to attack, even if he won, Mount Fangzong would be completely destroyed by the continuous Dharma-ending tribulation. Not to mention the pity of a Mount Fangzhong being destroyed, this mountain was closely related to the Yingxi. At a critical juncture, Golden Cicada might passively anger the entire Yingxi. When the time came, the Yingxi would suppress him with all its might. Even if Golden Cicada was at the initial and completion tribulation stage, he would not have it easy. The mighty experts who had explored the Yingxi in the past had already set an example. Golden Cicada smiled as well. His calm voice rang out amidst the chirping of cicadas. Almsgiver Liang, you are a man of great talent and strategy. The great Zhou dynasty's accumulation over the years has finally blossomed in your hands, like a hidden dragon rising to the heavens. But you are too ambitious, and you act too hastily. If your true self and the Grand Imperial Palace were here, you would have at least an 80% chance of obtaining Mount Penglai. Although you have lost the Ying continent and can't accomplish everything in one go, it would be enough for your great Zhou dynasty to reach a higher level after destroying Buddhism. It's a pity that your great Zhou dynasty seeks perfection and wants all three immortal mountains to fall into your hands. Instead, it will only turn everything into a mirage. Golden Cicada smiled. Thunder Abyss, do you want Penglai, which you can't see now, or Fangzhong, which is right in front of you? A huge crack split open in the sky, and an incomparably huge golden-winged rock appeared. When it spread its wings, it seemed to be able to cover the heaven and earth. Its pitch-black pupils flashed with cold and demonic golden light, and it had a majestic aura. It was the great sage of Golden Rock, who had once sacrificed the dark flower of Yudu in the Cloud Forest realm. Whether it was Lin Feng, Liang Pan, or Zhu Hongwu, their gazes froze when they saw the great sage of Golden Rock. On the other party's golden feathers, there seemed to be a purple glow rolling. The waves of demonic power around him were much more terrifying than when he was in the Cloud Forest realm. Beside the great sage of Golden Rock stood a huge beast. It had a pair of wings on its back, and was covered in the fur of a hedgehog. It looked like a bull and a tiger at the same time, and it gave off an extremely evil aura. It was the great sage of Cheongqi. Above the great sage of Cheongqi's head, a formation diagram flashed. The light broke through the sky, and the starlight of the 9 elements shone continuously. Chapter 780. Compared to when he was in the Cloud Forest world, the powers of the Grand Sage of Cheongqi had increased tremendously. Because he received the celestial spirit Snow Dew from the Golden Rock Grand Sage, the Grand Sage of Cheongqi, who was already at the peak of the 2nd level Undying Demon Soul, managed to break through his bottleneck. He cultivated the stars and his demon soul as one and reached the 3rd level Undying Demon Soul. The Golden Rock Grand Sage was already in the 3rd level Undying Demon Soul, and was in the syncretic Star Soul stage. His demonic powers were even more frightening now. Liang Pan asked, Lei Yuan, are you siding with the Golden Cicada Master? It seems like you have given up on your dream of becoming emperor. The huge golden-winged Great Peng had a pair of ice-cold eyes that flashed with golden light. It was as sharp as lightning and thunder. My goal has never changed. But that doesn't mean that I won't work with others in my pursuit of my goal. The Grand Sage of Cheongqi laughed weirdly. Liang Pan, you don't have to try to sow discord. Just like at the Yingzhou Celestial Mountain, you, the leader of the Celestial Sect of Wonders, ensure you cleared the area and forbade us demons from getting close. You humans can forget about the Penglai Celestial Mountain. Not just the Penglai Celestial Mountain, you can't keep the Fangzhong Celestial Mountain either. If you want to take all 3 mountains for yourself, do you think you have the ability to do so? Even if my emperor wants to fight with the Golden Cicada Master, that's after he takes care of all of you. Liang Pan laughed as he shook his head. You Cheongqi, you were lucky to have escaped in the Cloud Forest world. How dare you make such a ruckus here today? The Grand Sage of Cheongqi clenched his teeth and laughed coldly without saying anything. The 9 luminaries' heaven-crushing formation was fully unleashed above his head. The dome cracked and the 9 luminaries rotated. The pressure grew stronger and stronger. After the Grand Sage of Cheongqi reached the 3rd level Undying Demon Soul stage, the power of the 9 luminaries' heaven-crushing formation was vastly different from before. While the magic treasures used to set up the formation were not perfect, the power of the formation was much greater than the one at the Cloud Forest world. With the support of the 9 luminary stars, he could defeat any 3rd level Immortal Soul stage cultivator. He was not much weaker than the Golden Rock Grand Sage beside him. However, compared to him, Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu were more focused on the Golden Rock Grand Sage. Zhu Hongwu's eyebrows twitched slightly. Lei Yuan Golden Rock has already taken that step? Liang Pan also looked at the Golden Rock Grand Sage. After a while he said, Hongwu, you are going to attack. Zhu Hongwu said respectfully, Yes, Your Majesty. With that, Zhu Hongwu took a step forward and left the Fangzhong Celestial Mountain. He left the protection of the Celestial Mountain and faced the Golden Cicada Master, the Golden Rock Grand Sage, the Grand Sage of Cheongqi and the others. His martial will turned into a vivid and lifelike scene, condensing into a material form. It was as if there were countless worlds in the void, all of which formed the shape of a wheel. In each of those worlds, there seemed to be a god or a Buddha presiding over them, chanting together. Countless worlds, innumerable gods and Buddhas. Slowly rotating, the giant wheel was filled with an unstoppable power. It was as if it represented the heavenly Tao, suppressing the heavens. Anyone who dared to stand in its way would be crushed into pieces. There was no room for doubt and no room for resistance. The Golden Cicada Master looked at this scene calmly and shook his head. Zhu Hongwu, you are indeed extraordinary. The true meaning of the Heaven's Gate mantras, the mantras of Emperor Tai, and even the Buddhist mantras of the Great Thunderclap Temple, have been combined into one. You are indeed extraordinary. Even though you are only at the second-level Immortal Soul stage, many third-level Immortal Soul stage cultivators have been no match for you throughout history, the Golden Cicada Master said calmly. His gaze was fixed on Zhu Hongwu as well. However, the Grand Sage of Cheongqi's face was solemn. The Cheongqi tribe was a pure-blooded descendant of the four immemorial beasts. Even among the thousands of demon tribes, they were one of the best. Although he had just entered the Undying Demon Soul third level not long ago, his powers were already extraordinary. However, looking at Zhu Hongwu, he had a feeling that if he did not use the 9 Luminaries heaven-crushing formation, he would not be able to defeat this human in the Immortal Soul second level. It's a pity that if you want to interfere in this battle, unless you can immediately enter the Immortal Soul third level, it is still not enough. The Golden Cicada Master was calm and said calmly, you, who are only in the Immortal Soul second level, want to fight me and the Golden Rock Lei Yuan. Then let me see if the rumors are true. When you destroyed the Great Thunderclap Temple all those years ago, the magic treasure that appeared briefly, was it the legendary Great Heavenly Wheels? Zhu Hongwu's gaze swept across the Golden Cicada Master, the Golden Rock Grand Sage, and the Grand Sage of Cheongqi. Suddenly he laughed. Golden Cicada Master, all those years ago, we wanted to save our strength to deal with you. That's why we spent so much effort to deal with the Great Thunderclap Temple's Virokana formation. If not, why would we need the Taishu Temple's formation bursting drum? Slowly, Zhu Hongwu extended his jade-like hands that seemed to contain boundless magic. He clenched his right hand into a fist and raised it towards the sky. His action of raising his fist seemed light, but it gave off an extremely heavy feeling. It was as if he was lifting the entire weight of the heavens and earth with one hand. As the void twisted, Zhu Hongwu's majestic fist aura also entered the void and fused with the light that suddenly appeared. The heavens and earth have their own lifespan. All things have their own lives. I control the destiny of all things with the rotation of the heavens. I advance eternally, irreversible and unstoppable. As if the gods were singing, Zhu Hongwu's emotionless voice suddenly sounded in the heavens and earth. In his palm, there was only boundless light. However, one could not see anything. One could only vaguely feel that there was a formless light wheel that kept on rotating. A powerful force that seemed to cover the heavens and control the destiny of all life in the heavens, and earth started to spread. It was as if this greater world suddenly had its own will. It wanted to decide the life and death of all life in this world. The magic treasure of the destiny realm of the ancient Heaven's Gate. The magic treasure that ended the Antiquity Age with the Heaven's Gate cultivators, the Great Heavenly Wheels. Lin Feng looked at this scene and nodded his head slightly. Indeed, my guess was correct. The Great Heavenly Wheels did end up in the hands of the Great Zhou Empire, and in the hands of Zhu Hongwu. He looked carefully and saw that in the formless light wheel that was formed by the boundless world, one could faintly see many Buddhas rising. The Great Heavenly Wheel suffered a calamity all those years ago. It seems like Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu infused countless Buddhist treasures into it during the process of repairing this magic treasure. At the same time, they added a huge amount of Buddhist sariras. These Buddhas are all formed from sariras. Not only the imperial palace of Emperor Tai, but they also used the sariras to repair the Great Heavenly Wheels. The power of a destiny-level magic treasure was something that even the Golden Cicada Master and the Golden Rock Grand Sage became serious. Even though Zhu Hongwu was only in the Immortal Soul 2nd level, the power of the Great Heavenly Wheels was not to be underestimated. Unlike the Imperial Palace of Emperor Tai, which was still a step away from its peak, the Great Heavenly Wheels before them had already been restored to its peak. Furthermore, this magic treasure was not like the Imperial Palace of Emperor Tai, which had a hidden world and other non-combat abilities. This was a magic treasure that was purely used for killing. In terms of defense, the Great Heavenly Wheels could resist a few power-destroying tribulations. However, in terms of offense, it was one of the top magic treasures even among the Destiny-level magic treasures. Zhu Hongwu, why are you blowing your own trumpet? The Golden Rock Grand Sage said coldly. During the War of Buddha Annihilation, the Great Heavenly Wheels did not use its full power. While it was because you wanted to deal with the Golden Cicada Master, wasn't it also because you did not truly control this magic treasure? Wasn't it also because the magic treasure was not fully repaired? I am not blind. The reason why the Great Zhou Empire was able to repair 2 magic treasures in the Destiny level was because of the Great Thunderclap Temple. Furthermore, so what if it's the Great Heavenly Wheels? As the Golden Rock Grand Sage opened his eyes, purple light surged. A ferocious, dominating power spread and prevented the Golden Cicada Master, the Great Heavenly Wheels, and the Fangzong Celestial Mountain from dominating. Seeing this, Zhu Hongwu nodded his head. So that's the case. Not only did you cultivate the Hades Dark Mantra, you also obtained the Hunyuan Demonic Code from the Celestial Wolf and Long Yi. No wonder you were able to overcome the 5 decay of man and heaven brought about by the power-destroying catastrophe in such a short period of time, and return to your peak condition. However, no matter how fast you are, how many power-destroying tribulations have you survived? Once or twice? Although you are already in the Cardinal Tribulation's beginning stage, if I am in the Immortal Soul 3rd level, I can defeat you without the Great Heavenly Wheels. Now that I have the Great Heavenly Wheels, you can't overturn the heavens. Zhu Hongwu lifted the Great Heavenly Wheels, and his body was like a demon as he looked at the Qiongqi Grand Sage. On the Fangzong Celestial Mountain, Liang Pan sighed. Originally, I was guarding against the leader of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. However, the Golden Cicada Master and the Golden Rock Grand Sage are indeed strong opponents. I shall not hold back. As he spoke, 2 more figures flew out from the Fangzong Celestial Mountain. Seeing a middle-aged man with a black beard and a crown, the Qiongqi Grand Sage snorted. Luofu, are you completely on the Great Zhou Empire's boat? The Luofu holy man smiled slightly. I will only attack when I meet demons like you, the Qiongqi Grand Sage said. Previously at the Interworld Passage, it was just a small fight. Do you think you can defeat my 9 luminaries' heaven-crushing formation? Beside the Luofu holy man, a middle-aged sword cultivator in a navy blue robe said coldly, Only you have a formation? We are here to ambush all of you. Do you really think that you can counter us just because you suddenly appeared? We were the ones who chose the ambush location. Why do you think we chose this place? The Qiongqi Grand Sage looked at this middle-aged sword cultivator. Vast Sea Swordmaster. The person standing beside the Luofu holy man was the leader of the Vast Sea Sword sect, the Vast Sea Sword Master. He conjured a sword spell with his right hand. On land, I dare not say that I can resist your 9 luminaries' heaven-crushing formation. However, here, we are in the boundless ocean. Following the guidance of his sword spell, the ocean below them was filled with blue light. Sword chi shot into the sky. The Qiongqi Grand Sage laughed weirdly. Very good. You actually brought out the Vast Sea Sword sect's trump card. Aren't you afraid that someone will destroy your sect? It must be hard for you to set up a new formation outside your sect. The Vast Sea Sword Master said. Although it can't be compared to your 9 luminaries' heaven-crushing formation, my Vast Sea Sword formation can be set up as long as there is boundless ocean water. However, it requires some effort. The Qiongqi Grand Sage laughed. So what? It can't be compared to my 9 luminaries' heaven-crushing formation. You are only in the Immortal Soul 2nd level. How many times can you withstand my 9 luminaries' heaven-crushing formation? Silently, the Luofu holy man said, "With the help of the vast sea sword sex formation, I can fight you. Although I dare not say that I can easily win, you can forget about helping the Golden Rock Grand Sage and the Golden Cicada Master." Chapter 781. As soon as Tao Master Luofu spoke, Great Sage Qiongqi's heart sank slightly. He had also thought of what the other party might do. With the 9 luminary sky-falling formation in hand, Great Sage Qiongqi was confident that he could suppress Tao Master Luofu and Sword Venerable Vast Sea. Even if Sword Venerable Vast Sea used the Vast Sea Sword formation, the result would be the same. If Tao Master Luofu himself controlled a formation of the same level as the 9 luminary sky-falling formation, it would be a different story. But under such circumstances, no matter how confident Great Sage Qiongqi was, it was impossible for him to win quickly. He would inevitably be restrained by Tao Master Luofu and Sword Venerable Vast Sea. It was hard to predict the outcome of Zhu Hongwu's battle against Golden Rock Great Sage with the Great Celestial Wheel. On the other side, Golden Cicada was not sure if he could win if he did not activate the Dharma-ending tribulation to destroy Fangzong Immortal Mountain. In this way, it would seem that they were in a stalemate, but it would expose a major flaw on their side. Golden Cicada, Golden Rock Great Sage, and Great Sage Qiongqi were only allied for a short period of time. Once the battle was not going well, changes could easily occur. This was a purely psychological problem, and had nothing to do with the intelligence of Golden Cicada and Golden Rock Great Sage. Because they and the Great Zhou dynasty were not the only ones in Yinghai, others could suddenly intervene at any time. Although there were very few people who could intervene in a battle of this level, it did not mean that there were none. Under such circumstances, the seemingly stalemate actually meant that Golden Cicada, Golden Rock Great Sage, and Great Sage Qiongqi were at a slight disadvantage. But the arrow on the bowstring had to be fired. As Golden Cicada had said before, if they retreated this time, not only Fangzhong Immortal Mountain, but also Penglai Immortal Mountain was likely to fall into the hands of the Great Zhou dynasty. The two sides were in a stalemate for a while. Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu were not in a hurry to attack. If they could force Golden Cicada and the others to retreat, the Great Zhou dynasty would naturally be happy. After all, a bloody battle was likely to benefit others in the end, especially over at Yingzhou Immortal Mountain. Lin Feng's slightly strange behavior always made Liang Pan and the other two feel as if there was a dagger on their backs, their hearts uneasy. Lin Feng, who was hidden in the yin and yang dust, suddenly laughed. The Great Zhou Empire had squeezed out all of its potential this time. It was no wonder that they dared to set up 2 battlefields at the same time. They had indeed treated the appearance of the 3 mountains of Yingxi as a battle that would decide the fate of the nation. Just as Lin Feng had expected when he first learned that the Great Zhou dynasty had long since secretly occupied Mount Fangzhong. Mount Fangzhong indeed occupied an important position in Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu's plan. Not only was it convenient for finding Mount Yingzhou and Mount Penglai, it was also a powerful foundation for power. The Great Zhou Empire did not have the ability to open its mouth wide enough to withstand the attacks of so many experts after leaving the Ying Ocean, and not being able to bring the Fangzhong Immortal Mountain out. Even so, he had to temporarily rope in Tao Master Luofu, who was originally neutral, to help him. There was no lack of exchange of benefits. After all, the Yingxi was within the boundaries of the Divine Land. The number of demon experts who could barge in was limited. This also allowed Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu to confront Golden Cicada and the Golden Rock Sage even though the Grand Emperor Palace was not present. No matter what, Liang Pan, Zhu Hongwu, I want to thank you. Lin Feng smiled. Golden Cicada, Golden Rock Sage, I also want to thank you. As the two sides confronted each other, Lin Feng used the primeval Lord of Heaven to drive the yin and yang dust away. He followed the guidance of the heavenly Scarlet Pearl and left the battlefield. On one hand, it was the guidance of the heavenly Scarlet Pearl, and on the other hand, it was the Great Zhou dynasty's Mount Fangzhong. Lin Feng was sure that he was very close to Mount Penglai. After traveling for a while, the purple light in the heavenly Scarlet Pearl suddenly flashed. It was unprecedentedly bright and dazzling. Lin Feng perked up. We're here. After passing through layers of clouds and breaking through a few powerful illusions, Lin Feng's eyes suddenly opened up. A black sea seemed to be floating in mid-air. It was vast and boundless. There was no wind, and the waves were hundreds of feet high. They surrounded and protected a huge island in the center of the Black Sea. Is that Mount Penglai? Lin Feng looked carefully. The Mount Penglai in front of him was smaller than Mount Fangzhong, but slightly larger than Yingzhou, with a circumference of about 5,000 miles. The Black Sea on the periphery was the legendary Black Sea, the Sea of Vast Seas. Looking closely, although it was vast, it had a clear border. The surface of the sea formed an incomparably huge circle. As a whole, it looked like a hemisphere cut from the middle. In terms of visual effect, it was similar to Lin Feng's own Yujing Mountain and Yinyang Sea. However, although the color was the same, the Yinyang Sea was different from the Black Sea around Mount Penglai. The black seawater of the Yinyang Sea was a sea of spiritual qi condensed from the three forces of extreme yin, extreme darkness, and extreme cold. As for the Black Sea, it was actually a sea of space similar to the void battlefield, vast and distant. Lin Feng did not attack immediately. Silently, he sensed the movements of Liang Pan, Golden Cicada, and the others in the direction of the battlefield. It was not until the two sides had finally exchanged blows that Lin Feng began his next move. He knew that he had to be fast. The action of breaking through the Sea of Vast Seas would definitely alarm Golden Cicada, Liang Pan, and the others, who were not too far away, especially Liang Pan and the others, who had occupied Mount Fangzhong. Using the magical connection between the three mountains, at such a close distance, it was even more likely that they would notice something was wrong immediately. After putting away the yin and yang dust, the primeval Lord of Heaven revealed his tall figure and pointed at the Sea of Vast Seas. Immediately, a black stream of water similar to the color of the Black Sea shot toward the pitch-black Black Sea in the form of a thin line. On the way to the southern part of the Ying Sea, Lin Feng had already killed many void spirits. These were spiritual monsters unique to the Ying Sea. They specialized in luring people into the Ying Sea and killing them in an illusion. They grew stronger with the essence qi of the dead. Lin Feng had previously learned from the Red Thunder Dragon King that the Purple Sea Dragon King could break through the barrier of the Black Sea after refining the blood of the void spirit with a secret technique. At this time he did the same. The black stream of water was refined from the blood of the void spirit. The news was true. The water line formed from the blood of the void spirit cut through the black sea like a knife cutting through tofu. A miraculous scene appeared in the vast Black Sea. A gap suddenly appeared in the surging waves. It was a stable existence. The tides on both sides of the gap rose and fell, but the gap could not be filled, as if there was an invisible barrier blocking it. Almost at the same time, Lin Feng sensed that the violently fluctuating spiritual qi in the direction of the battlefield where Mount Fangzhong, Golden Cicada, and the Golden Rock Great Sage were suddenly and strangely stopped, as if time had frozen. The next moment, many strong hostile intents stirred space and time, converging on Mount Penglai. The destruction of the vast sea's restriction seemed inconspicuous, but it caused the flow of spiritual qi in the vicinity to change. The specific location of Mount Penglai was completely exposed, and Liang Pan and the others noticed it in an instant. Lin Feng ignored them and rushed through the path opened by the blood of the void spirit at full speed, rushing toward Mount Penglai. Like Mount Fangzhong and Mount Yingzhou, Mount Penglai was covered with all kinds of spiritual herbs and spiritual flowers, as well as springs and waterfalls. It was like a paradise on earth. But the most eye-catching thing was the magnificent palace on the mountain. Many pavilions and halls were grouped together, like the royal palace of an immortal king. At this moment, Lin Feng's heart suddenly palpitated. He felt as if someone in the palace was looking at him. Before Lin Feng could get close, a beam of purple light shot out from the palace, heading straight for the heavenly scarlet pearl between the eyebrows of the primeval lord. To be precise, it was coming for the heavenly scarlet pearl, and the spirit of the golden luo within it. The golden luo looked at the purple light that shot toward him in shock. Amidst his fear, he felt a warmth from the bottom of his heart. The complicated feeling left him at a loss for a moment. Lin Feng also felt that the purple light did not seem to have any intention of hurting the golden luo. Instead, it seemed to be establishing a connection and confirming his identity. Therefore he did not stop it. Instead, he stopped and calmly accepted the purple light. The purple light fused into the heavenly scarlet pearl. After circling around it, it swept up the primeval lord and the heavenly scarlet pearl, and kept them into the palace. As soon as he entered the palace, Lin Feng's eyes narrowed slightly. On the throne of the huge palace sat a tall purple figure. Its limbs and facial features were very similar to those of humans. However, there were complicated purple light patterns on the surface of its body, as if they were engraved on its body. The hair on its head was completely silver white. The silver white hair was limited to the width of a fist around its spine, extending from the back of its head all the way to its tailbone. A huge furry tail floated behind it silently. There was a long horn on both sides of its head and in the middle of its forehead. The 3 horns were covered in runes. It was a Yudu beast of the same race as the golden luo. Its facial features were similar to that of humans, but there was an indescribable arrogance and domineering majesty about it. It looked down on the world, as if it was the ruler of all living things. It was not a real person. Just this light projection alone was enough to make people's hearts palpitate. Slowly Lin Feng nodded. One of the 3 strongest demons in the history of the heaven primal world, the strongest expert of the current epoch, the holy emperor of the demon race. Yudu of the Tianhai Yudu. You truly live up to your reputation. Seeing this light projection, how could Lin Feng not understand? Mount Penglai had already fallen into the hands of Yuhuang Tianhai several thousand years ago. It was much earlier than the Great Zhou Empire had occupied Mount Fangzong. However, this secret seemed to only be known by Yuhuang Tianhai herself. No one else knew about it. There was no news about it. As Yuhuang Tianhai herself died in the war between the 2 worlds, the secret was also completely taken away. Yuhuang Tianhai's eyes flashed with purple light as she stared at the primordial heavenly lord and the sky-scythe golden pearl. In the end, her gaze landed on the golden luo within the pearl. This light projection seemed to have no intelligence, but the golden luo could feel a faint smile gradually appearing on its face. Lin Feng carefully sensed the figure formed from purple light. There's no divine soul imprint, no bloodline essence, no true spirit divine runes. It's just a mark left behind by demon energy. In this situation, no matter how great his cultivation was when he was alive, it's impossible for him to reincarnate in a corpse. After confirming there were no hidden dangers, Lin Feng directly sent the sky-scythe golden pearl into the body of Yuhuang Tianhai's light projection. Suddenly, purple light shone brightly, illuminating the huge palace. Then endless purple runes covered the entire Penglai deity mountain. But at this moment, a voice suddenly rang out. As expected, Mount Penglai has long since fallen into Yuhuang's hands. The gray-robed young monk, Golden Cicada, appeared in the air above the palace with a look of admiration on his face. Lin Feng calmly met his gaze. Golden Cicada's expression was also indifferent. He raised a jade ring in his right hand and smiled. Nice to meet you. You must be the master of the Celestial Gate, right? Is this benefactor Lin's divine ability avatar? This poor monk was lucky enough to excavate one of Yuhuang's former residences and obtain this jade ring. That's why I'm faster than Liang Pan, who has Mount Fangzhong. However, time is limited. Liang Pan and the Lightning Abyss Golden Rock should be arriving soon. This poor monk doesn't have time to chat with benefactor. If you refine Mount Penglai and control it, this poor monk won't be able to deal with it in a short period of time. So, I can only act as soon as possible. Chapter 782. Lin Feng's primeval lord of heaven Dharmakaya flew out of the palace. He looked at Golden Cicada and suddenly laughed. This should be the second time I've met you, master. Golden Cicada smiled. Last time, it was my doppelganger, Monk Dari, who met you in person. Today, it's my real body that has seen your Dharmakaya. I have a deep affinity with you. Maybe we'll meet face to face in the future. Lin Feng nodded. If I'm not wrong, besides the Mahavairokkana Sutra, you should have gathered the other 4 Buddhist Dharmakaya of the 5 Directions Buddha Sutras. Except for the monk Dari, does every Buddhist Dharmakaya have a doppelganger to cultivate? In order to study Buddhist Dharmakaya and hope to gain something, I've used some tricks. I'm sorry, almsgiver Lin. Golden Cicada shook his head and sighed. Lin Feng smiled. Not at all. A demon body cultivates Buddhist Dharmakaya. Master, you've done something that no one has ever thought of. Golden Cicada smiled faintly. When I was ignorant in the past, I was just a cicada that sang in summer and autumn without thinking. Fortunately, Buddha enlightened me with spiritual wisdom. That's how I became what I am now. From refining my first breath of spiritual energy to refining my first demonic power, I became a demon general, formed a demon core, formed a demon nascent, and obtained an indestructible demon soul. I've walked step by step until today. I've always yearned for Buddhism. Finally, my wish was fulfilled thousands of years ago. I'm overjoyed. Lin Feng's expression remained the same, but his mind was in turmoil. It's really him. The golden cicada sage of the demon clan who was already famous in ancient times. He lived through the ancient times and the Middle Eras, but disappeared more than 10,000 years ago. Most people would never have thought that the golden cicada sage of the past would become the golden cicada master of today. The golden cicada sage was quite famous in the Tianyuan world in the past. Other than his strength, his background is a mystery. Could it be that he's really an ordinary insect that was enlightened by Buddha, as he said? As he pondered, Lin Feng turned to look around and smiled. Good move, master. Golden Cicada also smiled. The sound of cicadas suddenly rang out in the surroundings. At first it was very soft, but soon it became louder and louder, almost deafening. The body of the primeval Lord of Heaven's Dharmakaya began to decay at a speed visible to the naked eye. With Golden Cicada's eyesight, he could vaguely tell that although the primeval Lord of Heaven was Lin Feng's Dharmakaya, his actual combat strength was extremely strong. In the Battle of West Hill City, Lin Feng had revealed his divine light of creation. Unlike his doppelganger, the Dharmakaya could also enhance the divine light of creation. In this way, the primeval Lord of Heaven became even more powerful. In this case, in order to end the battle quickly, he did not use Buddhist magic skills. Instead, he used his demon clan magic skills. Although he didn't activate the Dharma-ending tribulation, the pressure from the initial tribulation of the creation realm and the Dharma-ending realm was extremely terrifying. For a moment, Lin Feng felt like he was facing the Grand Imperial Palace, the Immortal Heaven Sword, or the Immortal Dragon City. Suddenly, a black and white divine light emerged on the surface of the primeval Lord of Heaven's Dharmakaya, shaking the void as if it had created an independent world, isolating the cicadas from the outside. However, the cicadas kept chirping, constantly wearing down Lin Feng's divine light of creation. If Benefactor Lin keeps activating the divine light of creation, I'm afraid this Dharmakaya will soon be exhausted. Golden Cicada smiled slightly. But for me it's still too long. Time waits for no man. As he spoke, the cicada's chirping grew louder and louder, shaking the void. The giant cicada's shadow gradually appeared in the sky above Mount Prunglai, covering the sky and the sun, shrouding the entire immortal mountain. Lin Feng frowned slightly. With a light tap of his finger, the primeval heaven opening technique was unleashed. The great power of creation was unleashed, continuing to support the black and white divine light, isolating the cicadas outside. However, accompanied by the cicadas chirping, the void where he was constantly twisting. The situation was still not optimistic. Because of the primeval heaven opening technique, the primeval Lord of Heaven's Dharmakaya was different from other Dharmakayas. In fact, it was not afraid of being exhausted. However, after Golden Cicada increased his strength, he had the momentum to exceed the limits of the primeval Lord of Heaven. Although the divine ability avatar could also activate the divine light of creation, it was still inferior to the main body. With a thought from Lin Feng, Heavenly Lord of Origin made a seal with both hands. Suddenly, a large number of black and white talismans appeared in the void and turned into particles of dust. A total of 18 yin and yang dust particles suddenly swallowed and spat out enormous power. They expanded and turned into endless light, as if they were real worlds. For a moment, the entire world seemed to have lost its color. Liang Pan, Zhu Honggu, the Golden Rock Great Sage, and the others who were rushing in the direction of Mount Punglai felt that the world had changed. All kinds of senses seemed to have disappeared, leaving only hearing and sight. Listening, one could only hear the endless chirping of cicadas. Looking, one could only see the endless light. In the next moment, the light gradually dimmed, and the chirping of the cicadas also began to die down. But soon, the chirping of the cicadas rang out again. Golden Cicada sighed and said with a smile, "What a powerful divine ability! I wonder how many divine ability avatars almsgiver Lin has brought? If it's not enough, it's still not enough." On Mount Punglai, Lin Feng clapped his hands and smiled. "The Golden Cicada Great Sage, you live up to your reputation. In the future, it will be a pleasure to sit and discuss Tao with you." Golden Cicada smiled and said, "When the time comes, I will welcome you on Mount Punglai and welcome the master of the celestial sect at any time." Lin Feng looked at him and smiled leisurely. "Master, you've said it the other way around." Golden Cicada's heart skipped a beat. He vaguely felt that something was wrong. In the void in front of Heavenly Lord of Origin, a crystal-clear, ordinary-looking jade the size of a goose egg suddenly appeared. Golden Cicada's mind raced, and his words were followed. The chirping of cicadas in the sky rose to its peak. The giant cicada in the sky flapped its wings and landed on Mount Punglai. However, at that moment, an invisible wave of Dharma power had already spread out from the crystal-clear jade. There was no light, no aura, and no sound. However, this Dharma power had already enveloped Golden Cicada and Heavenly Lord of Origin, and they suddenly disappeared. The top of Mount Punglai was empty. The chirping of cicadas had completely disappeared. Golden Cicada, Heavenly Lord of Origin, and the giant cicada's shadow had all disappeared, as if they had never existed. It was as if the previous battle had never happened. It was as if Heavenly Lord of Origin and Golden Cicada had never been in the sky above Mount Punglai. This is... Under the dim sky, Golden Cicada looked at the unfamiliar yet familiar plain forest in front of him and muttered to himself, "I've been here before. This is a plain in the extreme west of Tianhuang mainland." Even though Golden Cicada had already completed the initial tribulation and reached the Dharma-ending realm, he had existed since ancient times. He had lived for countless years, experienced countless storms, and cultivated the Buddhist Dharma for many years. His state of mind was already untainted by dust. At that moment, he could not help but be dumbfounded. Previously, even when facing the great Zhou dynasty's Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu, who had led the destruction of Buddhism, Golden Cicada remained calm and did not show the slightest bit of anger. However, at this moment, he could not remain calm no matter what. If someone could defeat him, injure him, or even kill him, or even capture him alive, Golden Cicada wouldn't be so shocked. However, Lin Feng had a Dharma body with divine powers. Divine powers and Dharma powers were clearly much weaker than his, but he could instantly bring him from the Ying Sea, which was not connected to the realm passageway, to Tianhuang mainland. During the entire process, he was not injured, nor did he feel his Dharma power being restricted. No one suppressed his cultivation level or restrained his power. However, he could not refuse at all. He did not even have time to react. This feeling was like a wolf about to pounce on a rabbit, only to have its vision blur and be teleported thousands of miles away by the rabbit. The wolf did not suffer any harm, but how could it not be shocked? Lin Feng smiled slightly. Fangzong Immortal Mountain can't leave the Ying Sea, so there's no way to use this move. Zhu Hongwu should thank you, Master, because this was originally prepared by me for him and the Great Wheel of Heaven. As he spoke, the primordial Heavenly Lord's body seemed to be moving slowly, but in fact, he disappeared extremely quickly. He had returned to the Punglai Immortal Mountain in the Ying Sea. All of this happened in less than a moment. Golden Cicada wanted to stop him and detain the primordial Heavenly Lord, but he found that the primordial Heavenly Lord had established a mysterious connection with the strange jade stone. It was extremely mysterious and blocked Golden Cicada for a moment. At this moment, the primordial Heavenly Lord had returned to the Ying Sea. There's no realm passageway, but he can travel between the two realms? Golden Cicada watched dumbfounded as Lin Feng disappeared. After a long while, he came back to his senses. He could not help but smile bitterly and shake his head. Buddha is merciful. The master of the celestial sect of wonders is really good. After the shock, Golden Cicada thought for a moment and understood. The primordial heavenly lord's return to the Penglai Immortal Mountain was probably a fixed-point teleportation. After leaving the Penglai Immortal Mountain, he would return to the Penglai Immortal Mountain without the slightest deviation. He did not travel freely between the two realms. But even so, Golden Cicada could not figure out the principle behind such a method. However, one thing was certain. If he rushed to the realm passageway that connected the vast land of infinite wilderness and the divine land, and then used it to head to the Ying Sea, it would not be easy for him to return to the Penglai Immortal Mountain, even if he was an expert in the Dharma-ending realm. The situation at the Penglai Immortal Mountain changed rapidly. By the time he rushed back, there would be nothing left for him to do. After a long while, Golden Cicada could not help but laugh and sigh. The master of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. The master of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. He is indeed a person that others cannot see through. Returning to the sky above the Penglai Immortal Mountain, Lin Feng looked at the realm-breaking stone in front of him, which had lost its luster. He sighed inwardly. Golden Cicada had indeed blocked a spear for Zhu Hongwu and the Great Wheel of Heavens. The realm-breaking stone could not be used continuously after moving a powerful expert in the Dharma-ending realm. It had to recuperate for a long time before it could be used again. Moreover, the destination of the teleportation was completely random. If he had moved Golden Cicada to the East Sea of the Divine Land, he would have been able to rush back quickly. The items produced by the system were indeed not very reliable. However, if they were used at the right time and opportunity, they would indeed have endless wonderful uses. The effect of being able to send oneself back to the original spot also required reasonable planning. If it was used well, like this time, it could be used improperly. If it was not used well, he could be killed at any time. Putting away the realm-breaking stone, Lin Feng looked up at the distant sky. The huge Fengzhang Immortal Mountain had already appeared. Chapter 783. From the moment Golden Cicada appeared to the moment Lin Feng tricked him with the realm-breaking stone and sent him to infinite wilderness, only a short period of time had passed. With the help of the jade pendant he had obtained from Yohuang's ruins, Golden Cicada arrived at Mount Penglai faster than Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu, who were driving Mount Fengzhang. But he was only one step ahead. Using the connection between the three mountains of Ying Sea, Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu quickly caught up. Where's Golden Cicada? The moment Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu saw Mount Penglai, they were also envious. However, they quickly controlled their emotions. Their gazes swept across the area and found that Golden Cicada, who had arrived first, was not on Mount Penglai. Looking at the incarnation of the primeval Lord of Heaven, the emperor and ministers of the state of Zhou fell into a brief silence. It was not because Lin Feng's appearance had surprised them. In fact, Liang Pan and the others had been secretly guarding against this. It was just that Golden Cicada, the Golden Rock Great Sage, and Great Sage Qiongqi, who had come with the 9 luminaries sky-shattering formation, had given them too much pressure. They had no choice but to deal with it with all their might. Now that Lin Feng had appeared, their suspicions were dispelled. But Golden Cicada's inexplicable disappearance raised new suspicions in their hearts. They had felt the aftermath of the battle between Lin Feng and Golden Cicada from afar. Naturally, they knew that there had been a fierce battle between the two, and that Golden Cicada had clearly gained the upper hand. But almost a moment later, the battle suddenly ended. Golden Cicada had disappeared, and Lin Feng's Dharmakaya remained where it was. Naturally, it could not be the Dharmakaya that Golden Cicada had used to kill Lin Feng just now. It could not be the primeval Lord of Heaven's Dharmakaya that had turned defeat into victory in an instant and killed Golden Cicada, could it? Not to mention, no matter how Liang Pan, Zhu Hongwu, and the others saw it, the primeval Lord of Heaven's Dharmakaya did not have this ability. Even if the primeval Lord of Heaven could kill Golden Cicada, how could a dignified great ancient demon, an expert of the Dharma-ending realm, be killed instantly without leaving a trace, as if he had never appeared near Mount Penglai? Unexpectedly, in Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu's minds, the scene where Lin Feng's Iron Tree clone used the world-breaking stone to escape from their tight encirclement. However, this clearly did not match the scene in front of them. With the help of the realm-breaking stone, It was possible for the primeval Lord of Heaven's Dharmakaya to escape from Golden Cicada. However, it was Golden Cicada who had disappeared. This made Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu feel that it was completely unimaginable. The more convincing inference was that after weighing the pros and cons, Lin Feng had teamed up with Golden Cicada. Although they had not been there themselves, according to Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu's speculation about the fluctuations of Dharma power and demonic power in the battle just now, the primeval Lord of Heaven's Dharmakaya was definitely unable to defeat Golden Cicada. However, Lin Feng was used to hiding his strength. Perhaps he had some special means to delay Golden Cicada and prevent him from winning quickly. In this way, in order to avoid the Great Zhou dynasty and the Golden Rock Great Sage rushing over together, Golden Cicada might propose a deal, exchanging certain benefits for Lin Feng's help in obtaining Mount Penglai. Now that Golden Cicada was nowhere to be seen, it was very likely that this demon had already gone deep into the Immortal Mountain and was trying to refine it. At the thought that Lin Feng might have teamed up with Golden Cicada, Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu frowned. Liang Pan's mind was completely connected to the Fangzhong Immortal Mountain. Silently sensing it using the special connection between the three mountains, the confusion on his face deepened. Golden Cicada is not on the mountain. A great demon in the Dharma-ending realm like Golden Cicada was so powerful that he was even stronger than the masterless Mount Penglai. If he refined the Immortal Mountain, the commotion would not be concealed because it would attract the attention of the entire Yingxi world. Then what exactly is going on? It can't be that Golden Cicada turned around and ran away, abandoning Mount Penglai, right? Sword Venerable Vast Sea was also uncertain. Or did the master of the Celestial Sect pay a huge price in exchange for Golden Cicada's withdrawal? How much benefit would it take to be worth Mount Penglai? Slowly, Liang Pan shook his head. With Lin Feng's personality, he will make deals with others, but he will not compromise easily. What's more, an alliance under the city? The possibility of this is very low. Sword Venerable Vast Sea frowned. Then it can't be that he killed Golden Cicada instantly with just a divine ability avatar, right? Thinking of this, Liang Pan also felt a headache. The situation was unclear, and the people of the Great Zhou dynasty felt like they were in a dilemma. Lin Feng was in the air above Mount Penglai. Seeing this scene, he laughed inwardly. He could feel that the Heavenly Mirage Golden Pearl and Yohuang's light silhouette were about to complete their fusion. Although the Heavenly Mirage Golden Pearl had absorbed the Zenith Heaven Divine Soul and established a connection with it, because Lin Feng had refined and nurtured it a long time ago, he was the #1 controller of the Heavenly Mirage Golden Pearl. Therefore, he could clearly feel that there were 9 streams of pure immortal qi circulating on Mount Penglai. They were incomparably pure and beautiful, and they gathered together in the Great Hall on the Immortal Mountain. Although the Yuhuang Heavenly Sea had fallen, it had paved the way for Lin Feng and the Heavenly Mirage Golden Pearl to refine Mount Penglai, making the refining process extremely simple and fast. Just when Liang Pan, Zhu Hongwu, and the others were slightly hesitant, the Heavenly Mirage Golden Pearl and Yohuang's light silhouette had completely fused, and the 9 qi of the Immortal Mountain had been strengthened. Just when Liang Pan, Zhu Hongwu, and the others were slightly hesitant, the Heavenly Mirage Golden Pearl and Yohuang's light silhouette had completely fused, and the 9 qi of the Immortal Mountain had been strengthened. More importantly, Lin Feng could faintly feel that he had established a connection with the entire Yingxi. There were layers of illusions and dangers, and the boundless sea that was filled with danger with every step he took seemed to have become his courtyard and residence, and he could swim freely in it. Amidst the rumbling sounds, the 9 streams of colorful qi turned into long rainbows, connecting with the sky and earth. The entire Yingxi trembled together. Seeing this, Liang Pan frowned. No matter what the truth is, we can't delay any longer. Otherwise, Mount Penglai will lose the opportunity to enter the Great Zhou dynasty. Zhu Hongwu said in a deep voice, "Your Majesty, please be at ease. Mount Penglai will definitely belong to the Great Zhou dynasty." As he spoke, he had already stepped through the void and left Mount Fangzhong. His entire person turned into a beam of light, rushing toward Mount Penglai. Meanwhile, Mount Fangzhong also broke through layers of space and rushed toward Mount Penglai. The dark golden light transformed into many chains that also reached into the void, drawing in the power of the Yingxi. At the same time, the many chains coiled around the 9-colored rainbows that connected Mount Penglai and the Yingxi. Lin Feng's primordial heavenly lord had shrunk in size and landed in the Great Hall on Mount Penglai. In the Great Hall, the light silhouette of Yu Huang's celestial sea had already disappeared, leaving only the heavenly mirage golden pearl. However, the heavenly mirage golden pearl that was originally the size of an adult's fist had more than doubled in size. Rays of purple light extended out from the heavenly mirage golden pearl. They were like mist that permeated the Great Hall, establishing a close connection with every brick and tile in the Great Hall, and every grass and tree on the immortal mountain. In the mist of purple light, there were innumerable complex runes that were a mixture of black and white. Lin Feng suddenly tapped on the heavenly mirage golden pearl with a finger. In the next moment, the heavenly mirage golden pearl shook violently, and its light gradually dimmed. However, while its light was restrained, its power did not weaken. Instead, it became more condensed. The round pearl rose to the top of the Great Hall, and all its power was used to embed itself into the ceiling. It was almost one with the Great Hall, firmly holding itself in place. The purple qi that permeated the Great Hall was directly connected to Lin Feng's primordial heavenly lord's Dharma body. Next, Lin Feng smiled slightly. Facing the menacing Zhu Hongwu and Mount Fangzhong, he willed the 9 types of immortal qi on Mount Penglai to spiral and merge, transforming into a beam of 9-colored divine light that shot out. 9 qi Great Golden Hall Vacuum Divine Light. A beam of magnificent 9-colored divine light directly destroyed all the dark golden chains that extended over from Mount Fangzhong. It was like a sharp knife cutting through the Gordian knot, cutting through the many threads. If the 3 mountains of Yingxi were to be used in battle, they would each have their own differences. Lin Feng's voice echoed silently between heaven and earth. Although they can both attack and defend, comparatively speaking, Mount Fangzhong is better at suppressing and defending. Yingzhou's immortal mountain produced a nameless ancient formation that is good for trapping enemies. At the same time, the illusions on the mountain are the most powerful and ever-changing. However, in terms of attack power, my Mount Penglai is without a doubt. As he spoke, a thick pillar of 9-colored divine light bombarded the Fangzhong immortal mountain head-on, causing the huge Fangzhong immortal mountain to retreat continuously in the void. Liang Pan's expression darkened slightly. Many dark golden chains extended from Mount Fangzhong, drawing on the tremendous power of Yingxi. The Tianqin abbot's mysterious light became more condensed, forcefully withstanding the attack of the 9 qi Great Golden Hall Vacuum Divine Light, stopping Mount Fangzhong from retreating. Oh, in terms of attack power, you can beat the Great Celestial Wheel? Zhu Hongwu's figure appeared in the sky above Mount Fangzhong. He said coldly, Lin Feng, if you were here with your true body, you might still have a chance. You're just a mere divine power avatar. Dream on. The formless wheel of light in his hand spun and smashed towards Mount Penglai. It was as if the heavens were collapsing and annihilating together. As the majestic force smashed down, the vast blue sea around Mount Penglai surged and blocked the Great Celestial Wheel. However, under the violent attack of the Great Celestial Wheel, even the layers of space in the blue sea kept shattering like fragile porcelain. The blue sea surged and the sky suddenly darkened. The entire Yingxi was stirred up at the same time, surging towards Zhu Hongwu and the Great Celestial Wheel, wanting to suppress them. Zhu Hongwu was fearless. Holding the wheel of light in his hand, he was like a demon god, resisting it without retreating. Liang Pan urged Mount Fangzhong to compete with Lin Feng's Mount Penglai for the power of the Yingxi. Under the interference of Mount Fangzhong, Yingxi's support for the Blue Sea decreased. The pressure on Zhu Hongwu and the Great Celestial Wheel was reduced. They immediately broke through the layers of Blue Sea and approached Mount Penglai. In the distant sky, Golden Rock Great Sage and Great Sage Qiongqi also appeared, eyeing Mount Penglai and Mount Fangzhong. Zhu Hongwu waved the Great Celestial Wheel and pounced towards Mount Penglai. Suddenly, Lin Feng's laughter came from the mountain. Go and accompany Golden Cicada. Zhu Hongwu frowned slightly and slowed down his movements. He prepared to defend against Lin Feng's hidden means. But immediately after, he saw Mount Penglai suddenly shake. Its entire body was wrapped in 9-colored divine light, and it rushed towards Mount Fangzong. Lin Feng smiled leisurely. Let's all forget about it. On Mount Fangzong, Liang Pan's expression was slightly strange. Sword Venerable Vast Sea, who was watching the battle, cursed. Madman! He's a madman. He loved to do this when he was driving Mount Yujing. Now that it's Mount Penglai, he's still doing it? The next moment, Mount Penglai crashed into Mount Fangzong. Chapter 784. Liang Pan was not worried about Lin Feng driving Mount Penglai into Mount Fangzong. He knew what Lin Feng knew, and so did Liang Pan. Mount Fangzong was the best in defense among the 3 mountains of Yingxi. But when Liang Pan noticed that Lin Feng's choice of collision point was very particular, specifically heading towards the place where the group of dragons of light were entrenched on Mount Fangzong, his expression instantly changed slightly. 2 immensely huge mountains, like a giant island and a small continent, collided with a loud bang. First, the dragons on Mount Fangzong collapsed in large numbers. Then the dark golden radiance and the 9-colored divine light mixed together, causing the world to become grotesque and blurry. The entire southern part of the Yingxi world was like a huge painting that had been violently twisted by someone. Countless illusions were destroyed, countless Yingxi monsters and spirit herbs were destroyed, and some cultivators and demons active in the southern part of the Yingxi world suffered. On Mount Fangzhong, Liang Pan and the other cultivators of the Zhou dynasty, as well as all living beings that did not belong to the mountain, were all sent flying from the mountain. Liang Pan's clone was also heavily injured, but what pained him even more was that he had lost contact with Mount Fangzong. Zhu Hongwu was half a step away from stopping Mount Penglai. However, he still controlled the Great Wheel of Heavens and heavily bombarded the 9-colored divine light protecting Mount Penglai, smashing the 9-colored divine light into pieces. First colliding with Mount Fangzhong, then the Great Celestial Wheel. Although Lin Feng's primeval Lord of Heaven avatar was stronger than Liang Pan's clone, he could not avoid being shaken off the mountain and losing contact with Mount Penglai. Before he was flung out of the hall, he took one last look at the heavenly scarlet golden pearl on the dome of the hall and laughed. He sealed the realm-breaking stone and other treasures into the pearl, then was sent flying by a majestic force. What Lin Feng wanted was not a head-on collision to determine the victor. With Zhu Hongwu and the Great Wheel of Heavens on the side, Mount Penglai was no match for the 2 of them. Not to mention that Golden Rock Great Sage and Qiongqi Great Sage were also eyeing them covetously. His original plan was to use Mount Penglai as the price to destroy Liang Pan's Mount Fangzong. I don't want Mount Penglai anymore. In that case, you can forget about keeping Mount Fangzhong either. Golden Rock Great Sage and Qiongqi Great Sage were also slightly surprised, but they had also thought that Lin Feng might fight to the death under their encirclement, so they hurriedly rushed to Mount Penglai together. Meanwhile, Liang Pan and the others attempted to return to Mount Fangzong. Zhu Hongwu stared at Lin Feng's primeval Lord of Heaven Dharmakaya with cold eyes. He raised the Great Celestial Wheel again and smashed it down. Lin Feng smiled when he saw this scene. Before this, no one has seen the collision between the 3 mountains of the Yingxi. However, through the light and shadow of the Yuhuang Celestial Sea, I know that when this demon was alive, he once used his clone to control Mount Penglai in an attempt to subdue Mount Fangzong. The 2 mountains collided once. As for the result, the storm caused by the collision of the 2 celestial mountains showed signs of subsiding. Everything in the world seemed to be gradually returning to peace. But soon waves rose again. The white smoke and clouds in the Yingxi scattered, and the seawater rolled into the sky. The overlapping illusory space also became chaotic. A vast and boundless tide of spiritual qi formed between heaven and earth, turbulent in the southern region of the Yingxi. It was the illusory sea bewildering tide. The violent collision between Mount Penglai and Mount Fangzong directly triggered the illusory, sea bewildering tide in the southern region of the Yingxi. Liang Pan and the others, who were caught off guard, immediately turned pale with fright. Having lost the protection of Mount Fangzhong, they were like small boats in a stormy sea that could capsize and sink at any time. Even Tao Master Luofu, who was in the 3rd realm of the primordial spirit realm, felt the danger. Golden Rock Great Sage and Qiongqi Great Sage fared better, but faced with the raging tide of the Yingxi, they were unable to break through and climb the celestial mountains. They could only watch as the celestial mountains, which were originally close at hand, gradually moved further and further away from them. One after another, powerful and strange illusory realms were mixed in the tide of spiritual qi. They were like bubbles, rising and falling, and then exploding continuously. The illusory and real power that originally bewitched and trapped people was now completely transformed into the most direct and violent burst of spiritual qi. It made the tide even more ferocious, sweeping away all people and things that dared to stand in its way. Because the illusory sea bewildering tide was triggered by the collision between Mount Penglai and Mount Fangzong. Although it did not affect the entire Yingxi and only affected a local region, its destructive power was much more terrifying than a normal tide in the Yingxi. Mount Penglai and Mount Fangzong were quickly engulfed by the tide and disappeared without a trace. Because of the sudden local illusory sea bewildering tide, they had to hide again. If they wanted to find them, they could only wait for the next appearance of the three mountains. For Golden Rock Great Sage and Great Sage Cheongqi, it was regretful and vexed. If they did not have the intention to reap the benefits and besiege Lin Feng's Mount Penglai with the Great Zhou Empire, they would not have given Lin Feng the chance to use Mount Penglai to collide with Mount Fangzong. On the other side of Yingzhou Fairy Mountain, the Immortal Dragon City, the Grand Imperial Palace, and Mount Yujing were guarding together. They most likely did not have a chance. At this moment, watching Mount Penglai and Mount Fangzong being engulfed by the illusory sea bewildering tide was equivalent to announcing that they were destined to return empty-handed from this trip to the Yingxi. But compared to Golden Rock and Cheongqi's regret and vexation, the Great Zhou Empire was so depressed that they wanted to vomit blood. After all, Golden Rock and Cheongqi had never owned Mount Penglai. They had merely passed by it. But the Great Zhou Empire's Mount Fangzong was originally theirs. Now that they had obtained it and lost it, it was even more resentful than not having it at all. Last time when the three mountains of Yingxi appeared, the Great Zhou Empire secretly obtained Mount Fangzong. This was one of the important reasons for their strong rise. At the same time, it also gave the Great Zhou Empire an extremely advantageous position in this appearance of the three mountains. It was almost half the home ground for the battle. However, because of Lin Feng's collision, not only did they not get the Great Zhou Empire's Mount Penglai, they even lost Mount Fangzong, which was already their backyard. Even though Emperor Liang Pan of Zhou had a stable state of mind and was extremely shrewd, he stared at Lin Feng's primeval Lord of Heaven's Dharmakaya and was speechless for a long time. Zhu Hongwu did not say anything. He picked up the Great Celestial Wheel and attacked Lin Feng, completely ignoring the illusory sea bewildering tide that was already in front of him. The primeval Lord of Heaven smiled leisurely. He did not resist the illusory sea bewildering tide, and allowed himself to be destroyed by the explosion of the spiritual energy. He looked at Zhu Hongwu with a smile and leisurely pointed behind Zhu Hongwu. There, Liang Pan's first-tier primordial spirit avatar, Sword Venerable Vast Sea's second-tier primordial spirit avatar, and some cultivators of the Great Zhou Empire, including a few princes, were struggling in the illusory sea bewildering tide and were in danger. Dao Master Luo Fu, who was at the third-tier primordial spirit avatar, was barely able to protect himself and was unable to help. Some of the cultivators with lower cultivation were already swallowed by the illusory sea bewildering tide. Zhu Hongwu looked at the primeval Lord of Heaven's Dharmakaya that was gradually being swallowed by the illusory sea bewildering tide, and took a deep breath. Lin Feng. He withdrew the Great Celestial Wheel and rushed to the side of Liang Pan, Sword Venerable Vast Sea, Dao Master Luo Fu, and the others. He used the Great Celestial Wheel to help the people of the Great Zhou Empire resist the illusory sea bewildering tide, and brought them out of danger. The great tide affected the entire southern part of the Yingxi, but it was most intense at the point where the two mountains collided. After leaving the point of impact, the great tide became weaker and weaker. In the end, it could no longer be compared to the great tide that covered all parts of the Yingxi under normal conditions. Liang Pan, Zhu Hongwu, and the others could also heave a sigh of relief. As for Golden Rock Great Sage and Great Sage Cheongqi, they fled in other directions and were long gone. I didn't get Penglai and lost Fangzong. Now there's only Yingzhou left. I can't miss it again. Liang Pan's expression had calmed down again. Originally, It was a plan to get all three mountains. For this, the Great Zhou Empire could be said to have put everything on the line and gambled with all its might. But in the end, Yingzhou Spirit Mountain confronted Xianmen Tianzong and the Great Qin Empire. The outcome was hard to predict. Penglai Spirit Mountain, which they were more confident about, was not obtained. What made the Great Zhou Empire even more depressed was that even Fangzhong Spirit Mountain, which they had controlled for many years, was lost. The other forces, be it the human race or the demon race, entered the Yingxi this time and returned empty-handed at most. Their losses were also relatively limited. But if the Great Zhou Empire could not get Yingzhou, not only would they not gain anything, but they would also suffer huge losses. For the Great Zhou Empire, which originally had the advantage, and was almost fighting on their home ground, it was like falling from the clouds to the bottom of the valley. The huge psychological difference made it difficult for the Essence Soul Realm cultivators to maintain their calm. After all, Liang Pan was not an ordinary person. He forced himself to calm down, and immediately made the most correct decision. Hongwu, head to the northeast of the Yingxi immediately. Yingzhou must not be lost. Yes, Your Majesty. Zhu Hongwu's voice was like thunder. He controlled the great heavenly wheel and pushed its speed to the maximum. It instantly crossed layers of void and rushed towards the Yingzhou Spirit Mountain in the northeast of the Yingxi. The Grand Imperial Palace and the Great Celestial Wheel met. This time, even if they had to fight against two enemies at the same time, the Great Zhou Empire was determined to get the Yingzhou Immortal Mountain. Otherwise, the Great Zhou Empire would suffer a great loss in this trip to the Yingxi. If Xianmen Tianzong or the Great Qin Empire occupied Yingzhou Spirit Mountain, the Great Zhou Empire would lose Fangzhong and Penglai. In the future, the Great Zhou Empire's influence in the Yingxi would definitely be severely suppressed. Yingzhou Spirit Mountain was connected to the East Sea. The East Sea had always been regarded as the Great Zhou Empire's backyard. If Yingzhou Spirit Mountain was lost, it would be equivalent to the Great Zhou Empire's backyard being on fire. If Fangzhong and Penglai were lost at the same time, the negative impact on the Great Zhou Empire would not only exist alone. Instead, it was extremely likely to cause a chain reaction, causing the situation to deteriorate continuously. This was something that the Great Zhou Empire could not accept. In the northeast of the Yingxi, above the Yingzhou Spirit Mountain, Emperor Liang Pan of Zhou sat in the Grand Emperor Palace and looked at Lin Feng with an increasingly deep gaze. Lin Feng's original body sat on Yujing Mountain. He naturally knew the movements at Fangzhong Spirit Mountain and Penglai Spirit Mountain like the back of his hand. Now that Great Zhou had completely given up on Mount Penglai and Mount Fangzhong, Zhu Hongwu and the Great Celestial Wheel would naturally rush to Yingzhou Immortal Mountain's aid. With their speed, it wouldn't take long for them to arrive. Lin Feng, who was sitting on the top of the mysterious sky treasure tree, chuckled and stood up. It's about time. In that case, we can take action here. Chapter 785. Lin Feng, who was at the top of the mysterious sky treasure tree, stood up. At the same time, in the sea region thousands of miles away from the Yingzhou Immortal Mountain, Taishu's doppelganger, who was facing the Eastern Heavenly Gates sect master Xiao Dongtian, also smiled. It's about time. In that case, we can take action here. Xiao Dongtian, who was facing off against Lin Feng through the spirit formation, vaguely sensed something. He raised his snow-white eyebrows and looked at Lin Feng's Iron Tree avatar. Lin Feng grabbed the Scarlet Thunder Dragon King who was being suppressed by the Yin-Yang Minute Dust and asked, "How do I activate this formation?" The Scarlet Thunder Dragon King's eyes darted around as he told Lin Feng about the ritual. After listening, Lin Feng did not say anything more. He directly bent his fingers and shot out 24 magical powers, which turned into purple seals and merged into the 24 pillars of light that shot up into the sky from the sea below. The bubble protected by the 24 tokens in the sea shook violently. Above the sea, the 24 light pillars suddenly manifested and condensed into a phantom image of the immortal mountain of immortal abode. Xiao Dongtian was expressionless, but his eyes were fixed on the light pillar and the projection of the Yingzhou Immortal Mountain that was surrounded by the light pillar. Originally, he was Emperor Zhou Liangpan's backup plan. Depending on the situation, he could rush to Yingzhou Immortal Mountain's aid at any time. The Crimson Thunder Dragon King and the Falling Waves Dragon King had set up a secret ritual together in an attempt to trigger the mystic tide of mirage within a certain area. After discovering this, Liang Pan and Xiao Dongtian decided to keep the ritual circle as a last resort. After all, the overall situation in Yingzhou Sea was advantageous to the Great Zhou dynasty at that time. With the Fangzhong deity mountain in their hands, they were in an invincible position. If things really couldn't be done on the Yingzhou deity mountain, they would simply trigger the illusory sea bewildering tide to swallow the Yingzhou deity mountain, and plan again the next time the deity mountain appeared. After the core illusion was broken, Monk De Kong transmitted his voice using his transcendence energy. He had suffered quite a lot of damage in the illusion. He was in a disadvantageous position when he fought with Zhu Yi, Xiao Yan, Shi Xingyun, Great Qin's king of Jingfang, Shi Lin, and the others for the control of Yingzhou Fairy Mountain. This news made Liang Pan and Xiao Dongtian prepare for the worst. The formation has already been successfully set up. Activating it is not difficult. The reason why Xiao Dongtian himself is still staying here is more to prevent Lin Feng from destroying the formation. However, the situation in the southern part of the Ying Ocean suddenly changed. Not only did the Great Zhou dynasty not obtain Mount Penglai, they even lost their own Mount Fangzong. Before Liang Pan, Zhu Honggu, Xiao Dongtian and the rest entered Yingxi this time, they had naturally made careful plans and prepared various contingency plans. However, there was no doubt that they would lose their Fangzhong Immortal Mountain instead of the other two mountains. This was the worst possible outcome. In this situation, if the Great Zhou dynasty wanted to turn the situation around, they had to obtain the Yingzhou Immortal Mountain. Continent had time. Yes, God Yang of Yang Mountain. Mountain was Liang time, and Liang had Liang of Liang had, and in Mountain, Liang had Liang had time. And had of Mountain. Due to the craziness of Lin Feng's Penglai crash, Xiao Dongtian could not help but suspect that he might go crazy again, and cause the illusory ocean tide to engulf the Yingzhou Immortal Mountain. In any case, Xianmen Tianzong and the Great Qin dynasty had nothing to lose. If the three mountains disappeared together, the Great Zhou would lose the Fangzhong Immortal Mountain for nothing. Seeing that Lin Feng was activating the spirit array, Xiao Dongtian immediately wanted to stop him. But after taking a closer look, he was slightly stunned. He stopped what he was doing and allowed Lin Feng to cast the spell. Xiao Dongtian, who had already extracted the complete secret technique from the Falling Waves Dragon King, could clearly sense something weird about the changes of the formation. Xiao Dongtian did not stop it immediately, and the spirit formation immediately began to operate. The Yingzhou Immortal Mountain that was surrounded by the 24 light pillars became brighter and brighter. Meanwhile, the huge bubble deep in the sea below the Immortal Mountain began to shrink. A dragon scale in the shape of a water droplet vaguely appeared in the bubble. Xiao Dongtian raised his white brows. As expected, the array has actually reversed. But it's not just a simple reversal. He immediately felt that the power of the Falling Waves Dragon King, who was being suppressed by him, was continuously increasing. However, this increase was very chaotic, causing the powerful demon soul and the dragon body to be somewhat out of harmony. The array did not trigger the illusory sea bewilderment tide. Instead, it had another effect. The two dragons, the Crimson Thunder Dragon King and the Falling Waves Dragon King, used the scale of the old Dragon King, who was in the undying demon soul realm of the Sea Dragon clan, to strengthen themselves using the unique secret technique. However, the Falling Waves Dragon King had been using his blood to refine the array, and was already extremely weak. Even if he was strengthened by the secret technique, it was very limited. Xiao Dongtian did not care at all. He was only concerned about Lin Feng. Under the strengthening of the secret technique, the Crimson Thunder Dragon King suddenly erupted. He gathered all his power together and violently attacked the yin-yang dust that sealed him, wanting to take this opportunity to escape. He activated the 8 Desolations godly thunder to the extreme. Thunder rumbled continuously. The explosive power and destructive power of the Brontosaurus race's innate magical powers were already among the best among the various dragon races. This concentrated explosion had far exceeded the Crimson Thunder Dragon King's usual limits. Although his demon soul and dragon body shook violently, and the Crimson Thunder Dragon King even felt his consciousness slightly blurry, he still seized this opportunity that he had painstakingly created to try his best to escape. However, Lin Feng smiled nonchalantly. "Old dragon, you have a bad temper. I originally did not want to take your life, but since you are seeking death, don't blame me for being ruthless." As he spoke, the yin-yang dust in his palm directly collapsed and shrunk further, as if the world was dying. This concept of power was closer to the world's dying than Lin Feng's small world technique. It immediately suppressed the Crimson Thunder Dragon King's rebellion. The side effects of his own secret technique, in addition to the suppression of Lin Feng's yin-yang dust, caused the Crimson Thunder Dragon King to be on the verge of death. Lin Feng stared at the Crimson Thunder Dragon King. Suddenly he had a thought. "Oh, wait a minute. Previously, I always felt that cultivating the human race's Dao technique after refining the Sorrow Iron Tree into a clone seemed a little inappropriate, but I didn't know what was wrong. The Sorrow Iron Tree clone cultivated the same Dao technique as the main body. Although its strength was not as strong as the main body, it was even stronger than the War God clone of the same realm. In terms of combat strength, it was very satisfactory. However, outside of combat, during the process of cultivation, Lin Feng always felt that something was wrong. As my cultivation level gradually increased, this feeling of uneasiness in the depths of my heart grew stronger. It was as if I was walking on a wrong path, and it was gradually getting further and further away. Now that Lin Feng's cultivation level was higher and his spiritual perception was stronger, he naturally knew that this feeling of uneasiness was not a psychological effect. Instead, his actions had really deviated from the true meaning of the Dao technique and the laws of heaven and earth. However, as for what exactly was wrong, Lin Feng still couldn't figure it out. He only had a vague idea in his heart. Since that's the case, I might as well change it today and try to walk another path. Anyway, this Sorrow Iron Tree won't be wasted. Thinking up to this point, Lin Feng looked at the Crimson Thunder Dragon King and smiled. "This secret technique of yours caused your demonic soul and dragon body to become unstable, but it helped me instead." As he spoke, Lin Feng's Sorrow Iron Tree clone revealed the Heaven and Earth avatar, and directly pounced towards the Crimson Thunder Dragon King. "You!" The Crimson Thunder Dragon King instantly let out a terrified roar. However, because of his weakness, he couldn't make much noise. In the next moment, the Crimson Thunder Dragon King's dragon body violently twisted. Lightning flashed continuously in his large eyes, appearing and disappearing from time to time. Lin Feng completely refined the Crimson Thunder Dragon King's true spirit and fused it with his indestructible demonic soul. Finally, he took over the dragon body. Seeing this scene, Xiao Dongtian instantly frowned. "He wants to take over that brontosaurus?" Thinking up to this point, Xiao Dongtian tried to stop him. However, Lin Feng was already prepared. A few grains of yin and yang dust appeared in the air and turned into endless light, isolating Xiao Dongtian outside. After being blocked, Xiao Dongtian instantly heard a loud dragon roar from the depths of the light. In the next moment, a purple-scaled sky dragon rushed out of the light. The light shrank and turned back into dust, floating in front of the purple-scaled sky dragon's body. Looking at the lightning flashing in the brontosaurus's eyes, Xiao Dongtian was sure that this brontosaurus was now Lin Feng's new clone. However, Lin Feng actually only refined his soul and fused it with the Crimson Thunder Dragon King's dragon soul. At this moment, the energy waves from Lin Feng's clone were clearly demonic energy. It wasn't like the Metal Tree clone from before. Although it had the demonic tree's foundation, it cultivated the Tao of the human race and circulated the human race's magic power. Above Lin Feng's original Metal Tree clone, the Heaven and Earth Dharma idol appeared again. However, it seemed to have lost some of its spirituality. Next, the Heaven and Earth Dharma idol returned to the Metal Tree clone, but the Metal Tree clone underwent a shocking change. It actually shed its human form and reverted to the appearance of the Salo Metal Tree. Black branches, golden leaves, and an eternal and indestructible concept of power flowed out from it. After obtaining the original Heaven and Earth Dharma idol, the Salo Metal Tree changed again. It seemed like it was going to become a magic treasure. Xiao Dongtian frowned. It wasn't that a human primordial soul stage powerhouse had never taken over the body of a demon race great sage before. Although Lin Feng's metal tree clone was in the late Yuanying stage, its strength couldn't be compared to an ordinary Yuanying stage cultivator. Moreover, the Crimson Thunder Dragon King had just courted death and used a secret technique to help Lin Feng. It wasn't surprising that Lin Feng could use the metal tree clone to take over the Crimson Thunder Dragon King's body. However, Lin Feng completely retained the Crimson Thunder Dragon King's demonic power cultivation and didn't transform it into his own Dao technique. This was very puzzling to Xiao Dongtian, because this was equivalent to reducing Lin Feng's combat power. Right now, although Lin Feng's Brontosaurus clone was in the first tier of the Immortal Demon Soul stage, and had crossed the hurdle of forming a Primordial Soul or Immortal Demon Soul, its strength was still the same as the Crimson Thunder Dragon King's. Compared to his previous Metal Tree clone, it was actually weaker. Not to mention, if he used the Metal Tree clone to form a Primordial Soul, compared to its strength in the late Yuanying stage, it would far surpass the current Brontosaurus clone. Even if he was in a hurry to advance, he shouldn't have used this method. This would instead cause his strength to regress. Although he had refined the Salo Metal Tree into a magic treasure, and it would probably be an extremely powerful magic treasure, firstly, a magic treasure needed to be nurtured when it was reborn. A true spirit-nurturing magic treasure wasn't something that could be achieved overnight. Secondly, the Brontosaurus clone was a pure demon race and wasn't good at controlling magic treasures, so it couldn't unleash the power of this new magic treasure. It was the crucial moment of the battle for Yingzhou Immortal Mountain, and he actually did such a self-destructive thing? Xiao Dongtian looked at Lin Feng in confusion, and he couldn't figure it out. Chapter 786. The purple-scaled sky dragon's huge body floated in the sky, lightning flashing in its eyes. Lin Feng carefully sensed the demonic realm contained in the Brontosaurus's clone. Although he didn't convert it into his own cultivation of the Book of Tao, he had been corroborating it. As expected, Lin Feng first sighed, then revealed a smile. Although it's a little late, it's not too late. He looked at the sorrow iron tree, and with a thought, the huge tree trunk kept shrinking, finally turning into a tree branch. The branches were like black iron, and the golden leaves shone with colorful light. This treasure can be called the Sorrow Wondrous Tree, Lin Feng thought. However, it still needs to be nourished and refined before it can truly become a powerful treasure. I can only make do with it for now. As he thought, he examined the Crimson Thunder Dragon King's soul that he had devoured, finding the correct method to activate the array formation in the sea below. Then the huge dragon head suddenly blew out a breath of air towards the sea below. It turned into surging lightning, and then evolved into ancient runes that fell into the sea. Xiao Dongtian raised his white brows slightly, staring at Lin Feng. Slowly he said, "Sect leader Lin, why do you have to do such a thing that doesn't benefit you or others?" With that, he directly reached out his hand to grab Lin Feng. Seeing that Lin Feng had released more than one yin-yang dust, Xiao Dongtian was prepared this time. He also used the heavenly hand. In the center of the palm that was as wide as the sky, the originally blurry light will seem to have solidified and kept spinning. It was as if all the worlds in the world were spinning together, controlling the life and death of all things in the world. Within the area covered by the palm, the void distorted. This was Xiao Dongtian using the heavenly hand to further activate the ancient heavenly gate's supreme mystique, the great Tao treasure wheel of heavens. The power and concept were even stronger than before. The yin-yang dust in front of Lin Feng fully expanded. Although it was small, it contained vast and majestic power. It was as if the dust was evolving into a world of creation. Xiao Dongtian's eyes flashed slightly. He raised his empty left hand towards the sky, and his 5 fingers lit up at the same time. Among them, there were 7 dazzling crimson flames that gathered above his ring finger. They gathered at one point, and started to rotate continuously. In an instant, they formed a huge rotating wheel of fire. Elysium's Great Heaven's 7 Planets True Technique, Dazzling Fire Divine Ability, Dazzling 7 Planets True Technique Fire Wheel. Above the middle finger of Xiao Dongtian's left hand, An endless amount of frigid air gathered, as if it was a raging wave from an icy hell. Great heavens, 7 planets, true art. Water, celestial star, divine ability. Celestial star, profound, cold ice fiend. These 2 divine powers were cast by Xiao Dongtian, who was at the 3rd firmament essence soul realm, so they were much stronger than Xiao Qingcheng, who was at the 1st firmament essence soul realm. The powers of ice and fire constantly surged, burning and freezing space. What was even more terrifying was that on Xiao Dongtian's left thumb, there was an intense flash of platinum lightning. It was as if a sharp sword light was about to slice through heaven and earth. The grand myriad heavens, 7 planets, true art. The gold radiance, grand white divine art, and the grand white profound gold thunder sword. On Xiao Dongtian's index finger, there was a towering willow tree with lush leaves. Its branches drooped down and swayed without any wind, emitting a rich aura of vitality. Great heavens, 7 planets, true technique. With celestial star, divine ability. Life-returning divine tree. On Xiao Dongtian's left pinky finger, there was a steep mountain with exposed black rocks and rugged cliffs. It was unknown where it was located. The mountain was heavy and majestic. It was as if it could suppress and bear everything. It was an eternal divine mountain that supported the heavens and stabilized the earth. Great heavens, 7 planets, true technique. Earth, celestial star, suppressing divine ability. Star, suppressing ancient divine mountain. Xiao Dongtian separated his 5 fingers and cast the 5 divine powers of the great heavens, 7 planets, true technique together. As the lightning, willow tree, ice wave, fire wheel, and divine mountain appeared, an illusory rift appeared in the sky above the sanctuary sea. The 5 stars, gold Venus star, wood celestial star, water celestial star, fire celestial star, and earth celestial star flashed at the same time. Their radiance suddenly became stronger, becoming more and more dazzling in the sky. It was as if they were falling from the sky toward the sanctuary sea. The magnificent power of the stars was added to Xiao Dongtian's Dharma spells, making the already powerful Dharma spells even more terrifying. Lin Feng keenly discovered that Xiao Dongtian's 5 Dharma spells were even enhancing each other with the 5 elements transformation technique, which further enhanced the power of the Dharma spells. 5 elements descending, 5 elements transformation, great palm of falling stars. Xiao Dongtian's right hand pushed the heavens hand with the power of the wheel of heavens, while his left hand drew the power of the stars in the sky. The great palm of falling stars was launched later, but arrived first. It slammed down on Lin Feng. The power of the stars was magnificent to begin with. It was not a match for ordinary people. After Xiao Dongtian integrated the 5 elements transformation technique, his power became even more terrifying. The defense formed by the 5 yin-yang dust particles in front of Lin Feng was struck by the great palm of falling stars, which had the power of the 5 elements transformation technique, and it kept on shaking. The world formed by the yin-yang dust particles seemed to be bombarded by the stars, and it was about to shatter. At that moment, Xiao Dongtian's heaven's hand also landed. The light wheel in his palm spun, and the world collapsed together. Xiao Dongtian attacked with both hands, forcibly breaking through the defense formed by Lin Feng's 5 yin-yang dust particles. When Lin Feng saw this scene, he smiled. The ancient heavenly gate's legacy lives up to its name. It's just that from the looks of it, your heaven's wheel is still incomplete. Lin Feng ignored Xiao Dongtian's attack that was already very close to him. He continued to activate the formation in the sea below. In the void, there were sounds of bells ringing. A large bell broke through the space and descended on the Ying Sea. It was Lin Feng's Dharma treasure, the bell of creation. If he hadn't been prepared, Lin Feng wouldn't have rashly turned the sago tree's points into the Brontosaurus's clone. However, Lin Feng's main body wasn't here, and the newly cultivated Brontosaurus clone wasn't conducive to activating the Dharma treasure. Therefore, although the bell of creation turned into the gate of creation, it didn't produce a Taiji Dao soldier. Instead, it protected Lin Feng's head. At the same time, the Salo Wonder Tree landed on the Gate of Creation. Under the nourishment of the Gate of Creation's oceanic life aura, it continued to grow, and its aura became more and more stable and perfect. A consciousness like that of a normal living creature had officially taken shape in the Salo Wonder Tree. Xiao Dongtian frowned slightly and grabbed the Salo Wonder Tree with his palm, and pulled it up. However, although the Salo Wonder Tree shook a little, it wasn't uprooted by Xiao Dongtian. Instead, it was still rooted on the top of the Gate of Creation. It has such a strong defense even before the sacrificial refinement is complete? Xiao Dongtian thought quickly, and continued to increase his strength. However, with the continuous supply of power from the Gate of Creation, he couldn't do anything to Lin Feng's Salo Wonder Tree for a while. The defense of this treasure is indeed amazing. If the sacrificial refinement is complete, I'm afraid it can block me for a long time with just a human first-tier essence soul cultivator controlling it. Xiao Dongtian's face darkened. Although the controller is Lin Feng's Demon Clan clone now, it's nourished by the stone door. It's troublesome. With a thought from Xiao Dongtian, a black ancient seal suddenly flew out. Its majestic power seemed to be able to suppress the sky. One of the 9 treasures of the ancient heavenly gate, the northern black heavenly seal. Although it was damaged and fell from the transformation stage, after years of nourishment and sacrificial refinement by Xiao Dongtian, it had returned to the peak of the transformation stage. It was only a paper-thin distance away from reaching the Mahayana stage again. As soon as this treasure appeared, Lin Feng's Gate of Creation did not react, but the Salo Wonder Tree shook. The Black Heaven Seal, one of the 9 treasures of the Heavenly Gates, was rumored to be the master of the ancient Heavenly Gates, Heavenly Emperor Kong. When he opened the blessed land of the Mountain Gate, he cut off the peak of a fairy mountain, and built the dojo of the Heavenly Gates on the flat peak. The mountain that was cut off was refined into the Black Heaven Seal. This seal had an illustrious reputation during the ancient times, and it was one of the 9 treasures of the Heaven Gate that had killed the most. When the seal smashed down, it was as if the world was overturned, and countless experts were killed by it. Although it had fallen from the transformation stage, its fierce power was still there. It was better than most transformation stage treasures, and it could even fight against some Mahayana stage treasures. If it was also at the transformation stage, the Salo Wonder Tree would not be afraid of the Black Heaven Seal at all. However, it was now at the peak of the transformation stage, even if it was an incomplete one. Its defense would probably be broken by Xiao Dongtian and the Black Heaven Seal in an instant, and it might even be completely destroyed. Black Heaven Seal, heh? Lin Feng smiled and raised his hand to take out a black and white jade. It was his own creation Divine Light Crystal. The Divine Light Crystal burst into an amazing brilliance in the air. The black and white colors alternated, and the sky was full of light and clouds, as if a sun was slowly rising. The powerful divine light fell on the surface of the Salo Wonder Tree, plating the branches with a layer of intertwined black and white brilliance. The next moment, Xiao Dongtian's palm and the Black Heaven Seal landed on the Salo Wonder Tree together. The branches bent instantly, and even the immortal and indestructible power almost dissipated. It was almost broken. However, with the support of the black and white divine light, it finally withstood the test, and the power of the Creation Gate continued to support the Salo Wonder Tree and the Creation Divine Light, finally making Xiao Dongtian fail again. Because it was formed by the crystal, even with the support of the Creation Gate, the black and white divine light would be consumed quickly. However, Xiao Dongtian was not happy at all. His pupils contracted slightly because with this delay, Lin Feng had already completed the activation of the array in the sea below. The water droplet-shaped dragon scales turned into a bubble again, and 24 blue tokens surrounded it, producing 24 light pillars that shot into the sky. In the void in the center of the light pillars, the Yingzhou Fairy Mountain appeared again. Next, the light and shadow of the Yingzhou Fairy Mountain resonated with the bubble in the deep sea, and circles of ripples spread out around the bubble, constantly shaking the surrounding sea. Waves that were visible to the naked eye kept stirring in the sea, triggering a tsunami-like tide. The white clouds in the Yingzhou Fairy Sea scattered, and the seawater rolled into the sky. The overlapping illusory space also became chaotic, and a boundless tide of spiritual energy exploded with the bubble in the sea as the center. Illusory sea bewilderment tide. The Yingzhou Fairy Mountain in the distance also shook violently. Emperor Liang Pan of Zhou, who received Xiao Dongtian's report, suddenly stood up from the dragon throne in the Grand Imperial Palace. Chapter 787. After successfully triggering the illusory sea bewilderment tide, Lin Feng stopped fighting with Xiao Dongtian. The Brontosaurus avatar in the form of a purple-scaled dragon transformed into a beam of purple light, sweeping up the Salo Wonder Tree and the Life Creation Gate, before charging towards the bubble in the sea below. Xiao Dongtian wanted to give chase, but a few particles of yin-yang dust exploded in front of him, blocking his way. The purple light rushed into the bubble, and the tide had completely surged, spreading in all directions. The scale of the tide that was charging towards Yingzhou Immortal Mountain was the largest. The 24 azure tokens surrounding the bubble all shattered, and the bubble was like a small boat that drifted towards the direction of the Yingzhou Immortal Mountain under the push of the Yingzhou spirit qi. The tide had already erupted. Xiao Dongtian sighed inwardly. There was no meaning in destroying the bubble anymore. Moreover, he could not even take care of himself in the face of the illusory sea bewilderment tide. The scale of the man-made illusory sea bewilderment tide this time was not as huge and violent as the tide caused by the collision of Penglai and Fangzhong Mountains in the southern part of Yingzhou Immortal Mountain. However, it was enough for a third-tier Essence Soul Realm expert to deal with it carefully and not be distracted. Xiao Dongtian looked at the bubble that was drifting away with the tide and frowned slightly. I see. After he possessed that dragon, he could reside in the bubble formed by the dragon's scales. His Salo Wonder Tree avatar has no chance of attaining the Essence Soul Realm in a short period of time, so it transformed into a dragon? He sacrificed his future potential in exchange for an advantage now. But I have a feeling that it's not that simple. Now that things had come to this, Xiao Dongtian rushed towards Yingzhou Immortal Mountain, while resisting the invasion of the illusory sea bewilderment tide. Emperor Liangpan of Zhou could not sit still when he received Xiao Dongtian's news. He looked towards Yujing Mountain. Sect Master Lin's actions are a little inconsiderate. After Lin Feng possessed the Scarlet Thunder Dragon King to refine the Brontosaurus avatar and the Iron Tree avatar into the Salo Wonder Tree, Stonefeather and Liangpan's consciousness on him had been wiped clean. Although he did not have Xiao Dongtian's report like Liangpan, Stonefeather also sensed the huge changes in the distant sea. After connecting it to the Scarlet Thunder Dragon King and Meteorite Wave's Dragon King's setup, he immediately understood what had happened. Stonefeather also frowned and asked, "Why is Sect Master Lin doing this?" Lin Feng smiled. "Fellow Taoists, please don't take offense." As he spoke, a Taiji pattern appeared on his forehead. The pattern started to revolve, and in Liangpan and Stonefeather's perception, Lin Feng seemed to have instantly transformed into a gigantic Taiji pattern that spanned across the universe. The branches and leaves of the mysterious Heaven Treasure Tree on the peak of Jade Capital Mountain began to tremble gently, from slow to fast, stirring the heavens as if it was gathering the power of the space of thousands of worlds onto itself. Like a sea of clouds, the purple gas in the sky rolled and rolled, and the images of all things in creation rose and fell together in the purple gas, encompassing everything. But what Liangpan, Stonefeather, and the others paid the most attention to was that the grand mountain that was like white jade suddenly shook, and then the mountain became translucent and pure like glass. A myriad of scenes flickered within the colorless mountain, and every single scene was different. The scenes changed ceaselessly, and they were strange, dazzling, and multicolored. Without much hesitation, Liangpan directly activated the Grand Imperial Palace. In the palaces that resembled the residence of a divine emperor, thousands of figures that materialized from illusory chanted in unison, adding their power to this peerlessly ferocious creation artifact. A gigantic chaotic hole appeared above the Grand Imperial Palace, and purplish gold light continuously gathered within it. Immediately after, two light pillars, one black and one white, formed a spiral and rushed out from within, heading straight for Jade Capital Mountain. It was the powerful magical power that the Grand Imperial Palace activated, the bipolar magnetic chaotic hole divine light. Facing this divine light, Lin Feng glanced at Stonefeather and the immortal Dragon City, who were also restless, and suddenly said, "The great Zhou dynasty's Fangzhong Immortal Mountain was destroyed by me with Penglai Immortal Mountain in the southern part of the Ying Sea. Now Fangzhong and Penglai Immortal Mountain are hidden in the Ying Sea again because of the illusory sea bewildering tide. In the great Zhou dynasty, only Yingzhou Immortal Mountain is left." Upon hearing that, Stonefeather's eyes flickered slightly. When Lin Feng used Penglai Immortal Mountain to destroy the Great Zhou Dynasty's Fangzong Immortal Mountain, he was not present at that time. However, with such a huge commotion in the southern part of the Yangtze, he naturally received news and knew that a illusory sea-bewildering tide had just erupted there that affected half of the Yangtze. Stonefeather would not completely believe Lin Feng's words. However, by observing Liang Pan and Xiao Dongtian's movements, he could also see many valuable things. Under Stonefeather's control, the immortal dragon city transformed into a gigantic light dragon. It suddenly turned into a circle and expanded outwards. It did not intervene in the battle between Lin Feng and Liang Pan, instead protecting the periphery of Yingzhou Immortal Mountain. The surging illusory sea-bewildering tide gradually approached. Sitting on Jade Capital Mountain, Lin Feng's eyes were as calm as water, like the flowing river of time. However, at this moment, the river seemed to be flowing slower and slower as if it had frozen. Rays of unique radiance scattered in the world with Lin Feng at the center. Bathing in this radiance, one seemed to have really grasped the profoundness of eternity, that profound power concept that could not be any longer and had no end. Eternity was the limit of time. Even heaven and earth would be destroyed. Who could truly achieve eternity? Eternity was too long and hard to grasp. Grasping an extremely short instant could similarly grasp the true meaning of time. It was just like how the future was unpredictable, but one could control and decide the present. Along with the eternal radiance, there were also specks of light that continuously flickered on Lin Feng's body, continuously extinguishing. They seemed to be short and fragmented, insignificant, but shockingly fused into the true meaning of strength that was fleeting in an instant. It was as long as eternity and fleeting as an instant. Eternity and instant were the two extremes of time. Comprehending the principles of eternity and instant would also allow one to see through the profoundness of time. At this moment, Lin Feng was impressively fusing the power concepts of eternity and instant. The aura around him was extremely profound, as if he had grasped the profoundness of time. Under Lin Feng's stimulation, Jade Capital Mountain emitted a chaotic and hazy luster that kept spreading to the surroundings. Everything became hazy and chaotic, as if there was only a dim grayish-white left. With Jade Capital Mountain as the center, it kept spreading to the surroundings. Everything in the world seemed to have lost its color. The flowing spirit qi in the air gradually calmed down. The gentle clouds that kept fluctuating above the Yangtze seemed to have turned into heavy rock sculptures. However, they did not fall down. The surface of the sea, which was originally undulating with waves, was now frozen like a statue. Even the splashing water droplets were frozen in the air, sparkling and translucent. However, they did not fall down, dissipate, or move. It was an extremely strange sight. The extremely terrifying bipolar magnetic chaotic whole divine light also froze in the air. The black and white magnetic lights, which were originally spinning in a spiral, were still hovering in the air. However, they did not move at all. They were less than a kilometer away from Jade Capital Mountain. Even with the naked eye of a mortal, standing on Jade Capital Mountain, one could clearly see the two seemingly solid rings of magnetic light that intertwined with each other. Anyone who was touched by the light of Jade Capital Mountain could not think, move, see, hear, or smell. Their lives fell into a state of stagnation. Only the Grand Imperial Palace, which was enveloped by the light, barely did not stop. However, the purple gold light instantly dimmed and became pale and gray. Above the Grand Imperial Palace, the deities, fairies, scholars, and mortals were all frozen. They could not continue singing praises of the Grand Imperial Palace. Liang Pan, who was in the Grand Imperial Palace, felt that his thoughts and reactions seemed to have slowed down and become sluggish. His expression was incomparably solemn. The fusion of the immortal mountain, the treasure tree, and the purple gas with him is equivalent to good fortune. At this moment, he is combining the other three forces into one. He is wholeheartedly activating the power of the immortal mountain to the extreme. He has truly grasped the true meaning of the great Tao of time. It is indeed powerful. Under the light of Jade Capital Mountain, Liang Pan even felt that his and the Grand Imperial Palace's Dharma power were being continuously eroded by the power of time. It was fine for the Grand Imperial Palace, But if this continued for a long time, Liang Pan could not bear such a huge loss. Stonefeather was on the periphery, and was still outside the range of the light of Jade Capital Mountain. When he saw this scene, his eyes erupted with an unprecedented shocking light. The eternal light has deduced the true meaning of eternity of time to an extremely high level. However, it is separated by a layer of the true meaning of instant of time. It is still lacking. Xianmen's master's light is inferior to the eternal light in terms of the Tao of eternity. However, it truly combines eternity and instant, touching upon the true meaning of time. As such, even the Grand Imperial Palace will find it difficult to move forward. If I drive the immortal Dragon City into the range of the light, I'm afraid it will also be frozen. Even the immortal Abode Mountain was within the range of Jade Capital Mountain's light. The nameless ancient formation directly dispelled it. However, when it touched Jade Capital Mountain, it caused a backlash from the immortal Sea Realm's power, blocking Jade Capital Mountain's light. Lin Feng had originally come to target the Grand Imperial Palace and the immortal Dragon City. He did not plan to sweep immortal Abode Mountain into it. Therefore, he did not go too far and did not continue to attack immortal Abode Mountain. Instead, he focused on dealing with Liang Pan. He activated his Dao technique and unleashed the power of Jade Capital Mountain's true meaning of time's profundity to the extreme. It condensed into a beam of cosmic light and froze the surrounding space-time. Even the Grand Imperial Palace, a creation Dharma treasure, felt as if it had sunk into a quagmire. Although the immortal Dragon City had eternal light, if it entered the cosmic light of cosmic light, the situation would be slightly better than the Grand Imperial Palaces, but it could not be unleashed. However, if two great creation Dharma treasures were frozen at the same time, Lin Feng and Jade Capital Mountain would also be under great pressure. The time that the cosmic light of cosmic light could be maintained would be greatly reduced. Stonefeather controlled the immortal Dragon City to retreat temporarily. Lin Feng was naturally happy to relax. Every second mattered now. It was very likely that an instant change would determine the final victory or defeat. What arrangements do you have, Taoist? Sure. Quickly activate them. Lin Feng looked at Stonefeather and the immortal Dragon City that were pacing around outside and smiled. Before Zhu Hongwu and the Great Wheel of Heavens arrive, I can continue to freeze Taoist Liang. Although Stonefeather's personality was more steady than Liang Pan's, Lin Feng did not believe that the Great Qin Empire could still remain as a spectator when the Great Zhou Empire had already gone all out. Stonefeather said calmly, "When Sect Master Lin told me that Liang Pan and the others had lost Fangzhong Immortal Mountain, I had already contacted the outside world. At this moment, Uncle Zhenyang has already entered the Great Zhou Empire with Uncle Anliang and the others. The Great Qin Empire's monarch Zhenyang, Shi Zhongmao, was of the same generation as monarch Anliang, Shi Zhongyue. He was another pillar of the Great Qin imperial family. He was at the third-level primordial soul realm, and had always been cultivating in seclusion. Since the war between the two worlds, he had not appeared for thousands of years. Chapter 788. Uncle Zhenyang and the others won't touch Tianjing City, but the 10 eastern continents of the Great Zhou dynasty will soon change hands. Stonefeather's voice was calm, but the content of his words was soul-stirring. When most people focused their attention on Ying Ocean, the Great Qin dynasty was prepared for two things. On one hand, they entered Ying Ocean to seize Penglai, Yingzhou and Fangzhong mountains. On the other hand, they placed their attention on the Great Zhou dynasty. For the 3 mountains of Yingxi, the Great Zhou Empire went all out this time. Not only did Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu enter Yingxi together with the Grand Imperial Palace and the Great Wheel of Heavens, the Songhai Sword sect, which had always been a vassal, and the Eastern Heavenly Gate, which had been developing in a low profile, also joined in. They even paid a certain price to invite external aid, Dao Lord Luofu, to show their determination to obtain the 3 mountains of Ying Ocean. In comparison, although the Great Qin dynasty had Emperor Qin Stonefeather personally going to Ying Ocean with the immortal Dragon City, they were not as determined as the Great Zhou dynasty. Compared to Stonefeather's steady and cautious style, it was understandable. However, after knowing that the Great Zhou dynasty had obtained Fangzhong Immortal Mountain first and had a huge advantage, the Great Qin dynasty did not increase their strength. This was rather strange. After all, apart from Emperor Qin Stonefeather himself, the Great Qin dynasty still had two Dao integration experts, Monarch Zhenyang Shizongmao and Monarch Nanming Shizongtang. Now it seemed that Stonefeather, who had been calm for half his life, was suddenly going to be radical. It was radical beyond most people's expectations. They would take drastic measures and attack the hinterland of the Great Zhou dynasty, while the Great Zhou dynasty was going all out for Ocean. In the Grand Imperial Palace, Liang Pan turned his head to look at the immortal dragon city in the distance, while resisting the extreme cosmic light. His expression was still calm. They were old rivals who had been entangled for many years. Others might not think that the Great Qin dynasty would suddenly attack, but how could he not? However, due to their personalities and different ideologies, in Liang Pan's opinion, instead of preparing for both sides like Stonefeather and spreading out his strength, it was better to concentrate all his strength and plot for one side. In a sense, if the Great Zhou dynasty could really occupy all three mountains and control the entire Ocean, it would not be a loss even if they lost most of the current territory on the Divine Land. With Ocean, their vitality would not be damaged, and there would always be a chance to take back their homeland. Unfortunately, looking at it now, the Great Zhou Empire's hopes of taking over all three mountains had been completely dashed. Instead, the Great Qin Empire was going to use this opportunity to kick them when they were down. To accomplish everything in one go is almost like a gambler. How can this be the behavior of an experienced ruler? Stonefeather's gaze pierced through the layers of void, and calmly met Liang Pan's gaze. Liang Pan, your Great Zhou has rapidly risen in recent years. Your steps are too fast, and you are too eager for quick success. Even you have become impetuous. He gazed into the distance and looked at the nearing illusory ocean bewildering tide. He said indifferently, "You were trapped here by Sect Master Lin. I was also by your side. Zhu Hongwu and the Great Wheel of Heavens could only choose to come here to save you. They couldn't possibly return to the Divine Land." Lin Feng and the others used their divine senses to communicate. With a single thought, they expressed their thoughts clearly. Although it sounded complicated, it actually happened in an instant. Uncle Gunyang and the others will definitely succeed in this trip. As for the future, Stonefeather's gaze was calm. After losing Fangzhang Mountain and losing Yingzhou Mountain, even if you and Zhu Hongwu can leave this place alive today, I'll definitely injure your vitality, so that you won't be able to cause trouble for the Great Qin Empire. He did not mention how he would deal with Yingzhou Mountain, but Lin Feng and Liang Pan both understood that he was going to give it to Xianmen Tianzong. They would use the immortal dragon city to temporarily block the illusory ocean bewildering tide. Then they would wait for Xianmen Tianzong and the others to refine Yingzhou Mountain before letting the illusory ocean bewildering tide pass through. This way, Yingzhou Mountain would directly disappear and not become the Great Zhou Empire's target. Of course, Xianmen Tianzong could also choose not to hide Yingzhou Mountain for now. Instead, he could use it as a combat force and join the battle to besiege the Great Zhou Empire. This would depend on Lin Feng's decision. Yingzhou Mountain was also very important. If the Great Qin Empire could obtain Yingzhou Mountain now that Penglai and Fangzong had disappeared, their strength would surpass the Great Zhou Empire once again. At the same time, they would have a foothold in the East Sea and suppress the Great Zhou Empire from both east and west. However, Stonefeather's thoughts were very clear. What he could definitely obtain was the most precious. Compared to Yingzhou Mountain that Xianmen Tianzong was also eyeing, the Great Zhou Empire's large territory and resources were naturally more practical. Penglai and Fangzhang Mountain had disappeared. The Great Qin Empire would still have a chance when the three mountains appeared again. Now that he had given Yingzhou Mountain to Xianmen Tianzong, both sides could still maintain a good relationship. At that time, they would still be able to suppress the Great Zhou Empire from both east and west. At the same time, Stonefeather believed that Lin Feng would definitely cooperate with him to trap Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu, who would come to rescue later, and wait for the Divine Land to be settled. Otherwise, even if Lin Feng was not afraid of facing the Grand Imperial Palace and the Great Wheel of Heavens alone, how could it be safer and easier than joining hands with the immortal Dragon City to fight 2 against 2? Liang Pan looked at Stonefeather. You're still very cautious, Stonefeather. He had not made a move all along. After confirming that the Great Zhou Empire had lost Fangzhong Mountain, and witnessing the power of Lin Feng's celestial extremity cosmic light, he had calculated that the immortal dragon city joining hands with Yujing Mountain could firmly suppress the combination of the Grand Imperial Palace and the Great Wheel of Heavens, causing the Great Zhou Emperor and officials to be unable to return to reinforce the Divine Land. At the same time, Great Zhou Empire had not obtained Penglai and lost Fangzhong. There was gradually no hope for Yingzhou Empire. This way, they would not be able to improve their strength from Yinghai. After the matter at Yinghai was settled, they would not have absolute confidence to deal with the Great Qin Empire. Lin Feng sat on Yujing Mountain and smiled. Suddenly, a black figure jumped down from the mountain and landed on Yingzhou Mountain. The figure was tall and burly, and its facial features were exactly the same as Lin Feng. However, its body was emitting an extremely scorching aura like the scorching sun. It was Lin Feng's God of War clone. Seeing this avatar, Liang Pan and Stonefeather were both slightly taken aback. Because Lin Feng's avatar of the God of War spent a long time in the void battlefield, and almost never returned to the vast land of the Divine Continent. Even though they would not forget the existence of the avatar of the God of War when they were planning, their priority was undoubtedly the last. At this moment, Lin Feng's God of War clone had suddenly appeared, slightly surprising them. However, Liang Pan and Stonefeather did not know that Lin Feng could summon the God of War clone to his side anytime and anywhere because he had obtained it from the system. However, he had placed the God of War clone in the void battlefield to look for Shi Tianhao's parents, so he would not summon it back easily. This summon was not for the 3 mountains of Yinghai. Instead, the God of War clone had an unexpected harvest in the void battlefield, so Lin Feng had summoned it back and brought it back with him. Coincidentally, Lin Feng had ordered the God of War clone to refine Yingzhou Mountain, while keeping an eye on the Grand Emperor Palace and the Immortal Dragon City. Although the God of War clone was a martial arts clone and had weaker spells, it was not difficult for it to refine an immortal mountain. Liang Pan watched as Lin Feng's clone descended the mountain and stared at Stonefeather with a grim expression. Stonefeather, you've really put in a lot of effort. It's not easy to communicate with the Divine Land in Yinghai. Just the treasure that allows you to contact Shi Zhongmao and the others at any time is already extraordinary. I wonder if I hadn't lost Fangzhong Immortal Mountain, or even Penglai, what would you have done? Stonefeather's brows twitched slightly upon hearing Liang Pan's calmness. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly sensed some changes happening to Yingzhou Mountain below. Not only Stonefeather, but even Liang Pan sensed it. While he was busy resisting the extreme cosmic light, he scanned the area with his divine sense. Immediately, he felt as if a massive consciousness had awakened in Yingzhou Mountain. As soon as Lin Feng's God of War clone landed on the mountain, it passed through the nameless ancient formation that had been shattered and sped toward the peak of Yingzhou Mountain. Lin Feng thought, it seems like there's really something hidden inside this Yingzhou Mountain. It should be this thing that's mutated. But the question is, because of what, because of whom, this thing suddenly changed? With a thought, Lin Feng transmitted his voice to his disciples in Yingzhou Mountain one by one. Then, he realized that everyone responded except for one person. Zhui. Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. Xiaoyi, did you pick up something incredible? Almost at the same time, Liang Pan and Stonefeather were also contacting their own people in the mountain. Liang Pan did not find anything, but Stonefeather realized that he could not contact King Jingfang, Shi Lin. At this moment, in the cave inside Yingzhou Mountain, there were 2 forces fighting on the white jade pillar, that looked like a pillar that supported the sky. On one side, there was black mystic water that kept spreading on the surface of the white jade pillar from bottom to top. On the other side, there was a large number of light and dark words that formed scriptures that extended from the top of the white jade pillar to the bottom. The black mystic water and the light and dark words met in the middle of the white jade pillar. They did not give way to each other and continued to wrestle. At the same time, 2 silhouettes were fighting nonstop inside the cave, and the battle was earth-shattering. One of them was naturally Zhu Yi, and the other was the Great Qin Dynasty's King Jingfang, Shi Lin. Shi Lin had already abandoned his human form. He did not even use his primordial spirit incarnation. Instead, he manifested his void reversion Dharma body, turning into a 3-meter-tall middle-aged man wearing a crown and an official robe. He was completely formed of light and shadow. In the sky, a black sword light spiraled like a black river, entangling Zhu Yi's eternal night demon steel and immeasurable light Bodhi heart lamp tightly. This black river sword was a Dharma treasure at the transformation stage. Under the control of the second-tier primordial spirit realm expert, Shirlin, it could perfectly unleash its dharmic powers. It was almost equivalent to another second-tier primordial spirit realm cultivator. Against the eternal night demon steel and immeasurable light Bodhi heart lamp, which were unable to unleash their full strength, Shirlin was still able to deal with them easily. If not for the fact that the eternal night demon steel and immeasurable light Bodhi heart lamp had deep foundations and were familiar with their light and dark techniques, they might even be at a disadvantage against the Black River sword. Zhu Yi was wearing the Paragon Sage ancient robe. Facing King Jingfang Shirlin, who had extraordinary divine powers and dharmic powers, he also found it a little tricky. To be fair, Shirlin's cultivation was weaker than Monk Dekong's. However, unlike Monk Dekong, who had been severely injured, Shirlin was basically in good condition. The powerful strength of a second-tier primordial spirit realm cultivator's void reversion Dharma body made it difficult for Zhu Yi, who was only at the late-stage Yuanying realm, to deal with him. Although Shirlin wasn't afraid, it was still extremely difficult to defeat him. Shirlin revealed his void reversion Dharma body and pushed his dharmic powers to the peak. However, he was also wary of Zhu Yi. He wanted to prevent Zhu Yi from counterattacking and injuring his void reversion Dharma body. What Zhu Yi was really concerned about was that he was at a slight disadvantage in the fight for the White Jade Pillar. The foundation of the Dharma treasure embryo of creation was too deep. To refine it, it wasn't just a matter of the strength of one's divine powers and dharmic powers. It was also closely related to the cultivator's understanding of the great Tao of heaven and earth. Although Zhu Yi had a deeper understanding of the primordial spirit realm after merging with Tao Venerate Hao Yang's divine spirit mark in the immortal mountain illusion, he was still slightly inferior to Shirlin, whose second-tier primordial spirit realm had returned to the void reversion realm. Chapter 789. The tall white jade pillar didn't reject the black water and light and dark characters on its surface. It still stood there quietly. The white jade pillar didn't have any preference as to who would refine it. It was like a world of creation. Silently, it accommodated thousands of living beings in this vast world to grow and reproduce on their own until they died and were destroyed. The gigantic qilin above Zhu Yi's head stomped on the ground, crushing the black water. However, the black water didn't disperse after it was crushed. Instead, it turned into streams of water vapor that surrounded Zhu Yi like a cloud, trying to corrupt his magic power. This can't go on. Zhu Yi's gaze fell on the white jade pillar. That was the real battlefield. In fact, whether it was him or Shirlin, they could only refine the white jade pillar in the preliminary stage. If they wanted to completely turn this treasure into a real creation treasure, they still had a long way to go with their magical powers and magic power. If there was any mishap, it was possible that the refinement would fail, and this creation treasure embryo would be wasted. However, as long as they could refine it initially, they would be able to use the treasure's power to completely defeat their opponents. For the current Zhu Yi and Shirlin, a creation treasure that hadn't been completely refined was enough to instantly decide the outcome of the battle. It was more than enough. Zhu Yi could still hold on in a head-on battle, but he was at a disadvantage when it came to refining the white jade pillar. As time passed, when the black water squeezed out all of Zhu Yi's light and dark characters and monopolized the white jade pillar, Shirlin would have refined this creation treasure embryo initially. At that time, he would be able to suppress Zhu Yi with a flip of his hand without any suspense. Although he was at a disadvantage and the situation was worrying, Zhu Yi didn't panic. He didn't feel dispirited or defeated. Instead, he was calm and collected. At the same time, his mind was racing. I originally planned to nurture it slowly and then refine it in one go. Looks like I have to take a risk now. Zhu Yi's eyes flashed. In a safe state, everything is ready. It's easy to succeed, but there's external pressure. It's another kind of incentive. The result might not be bad. At the thought of this, Zhu Yi's ancient robe shone brightly, and the Dharma idol let out a deafening roar. The four divisions' great heavenly cycle formation, which was originally filled with starlight, once again revealed its heavenly cycle appearance. It protected Zhu Yi in the middle and landed on the golden Permitha bridge together. Facing the stone forest, he suddenly adopted a completely defensive stance. The eternal night devil steel and the immeasurable light Bodhi heart lamp suddenly transformed into two enormous crystals, one bright and one dark. They belonged to two different ends of the spectrum, and combined to form a transparent structure that looked like a sacrificial altar, directly sealing Shirlin's Black River sword within it. This was none other than Zhu Yi's mandala world barrier of light and darkness. Now that the two Dharma treasures were working together to seal the Black River sword, the Black River sword continued to swim around within the barrier, wanting to escape. However, the eternal night devil steel and the immeasurable light Bodhi heart lamp had completely given up on attacking. They only retained their defensive and sealing abilities, causing the Black River sword to be unable to escape in a short period of time. Under the protection of the Golden Bridge and Heavenly Cycle formation, Zhu Yi took a deep breath and released the Haoyang Golden Body. He had obtained the Haoyang Golden Body for some time now. After careful analysis, he had already figured out the reason why the Great Zhou Empire had handed Dao Venerate Haoyang's physical body to the Great Void Monk. Dao Venerate Haoyang had perished on the Fangzhong Immortal Mountain. Although his spirit had been destroyed, his physical body had been preserved. After being nourished by the spirit qi of the Yingxi, he had entered an extremely mysterious state by chance. His martial true intent had been preserved, but his spirit was unable to recover. For a second-tier primordial soul adept like Dao Venerate Haoyang, his void return Dharma body and physical body had completely fused together. If his physical body and martial true intent were intact, even if his Dharma body was destroyed for a moment, after a long period of nourishment, it could even be reborn. However, because of the strange suppression of the Yingxi realm, Dao Venerate Haoyang's physical body had not been able to reform. This caused Dao Venerate Haoyang's physical body to become a unique existence that was very suitable for cultivators to refine into their own doppelgangers. After the Fangzhong Immortal Mountain had fallen into the hands of the Great Zhou Empire, Dao Venerate Haoyang's physical body had also fallen into the hands of Emperor Liangpan of Zhou. Liangpan had planned to refine it into another doppelganger. A doppelganger that could completely reproduce Dao Venerate Haoyang's strength as a second-tier primordial soul adept in the past. At the same time, it could completely obtain the Astro-Sovereign martial arts legacy that Dao Venerate Haoyang had cultivated in the past. If this martial arts legacy was given to Zhu Hongwu to study and cultivate in detail, Zhu Hongwu's strength would also increase by another level. In order to completely reproduce the true meaning of martial arts, Liangpan had temporarily handed over this Haoyang golden body to Monk Dakong for safekeeping. He would refine it with the unique Buddhist method in order to make it perfect. However, now that the Haoyang golden body had fallen into the hands of Zhu Yi, and with the pressure from the great Qin dynasty's Jingfang Wang Shilin, Zhu Yi directly activated the Astro-Sovereign martial arts that he had comprehended in the Fairy Mountain environment, and blasted it towards the golden body of Haoyang. The martial arts concepts that came from the same source immediately resonated. Something in the extremely condensed Haoyang golden body seemed to vibrate, and even the entire golden body shone brightly. The originally dull eyes that were like wooden and clay sculptures seemed to shoot out a strange light as they looked at Zhu Yi. The golden body of Haoyang, which had been sitting cross-legged all this time, suddenly shook from head to toe, as if it wanted to stand up. The golden Buddhist light on the surface of the body fell off like a layer of gold foil. Where the golden light disappeared, bright starlight gushed out from it. At this moment, the Haoyang golden body was like a sleeping giant that was about to wake up. Facing this Haoyang golden body, Zhu Yi seemed to be facing the starry universe. All the acupoints on Haoyang Dao Master's body vibrated together, like thousands of stars twinkling in the universe. Zhu Yi made a gesture with his hands, and the vast purple air hovered above the golden body of Haoyang, turning into the image of the 8 diagrams. In the center of the 8 diagrams, the images of dragon, phoenix, turtle, and Kylan were condensed. Around the 4 images of the 8 diagrams, the chapters of saints formed by the characters of light and darkness kept hovering. The Jingfeng Wang Shirlin's attack was still going on, as if it would break the defense of Zhu Yi at any time when he was distracted. But Zhu Yi didn't pay attention to it. Most of his attention was focused on the matter in front of him. The sense of urgency and oppression brought by the stone forest became the driving force, which helped him to master his own Taoism to a new height. Zhu Yi's spirit had left his body and entered the 4 images of the 8 diagrams formed by his mana. Then he separated his thoughts with the soul separation method. Next, he didn't continue to drive the martial arts of Astro Sovereign. Instead, he put the 4 images of the 8 diagrams and the characters of light and darkness formed by his mana into the eyebrows of the golden body of Hao Yang. At this moment, he had to use his own Taoism gist of trueness. Otherwise, instead of refining the golden body of Hao Yang as his doppelganger, Hao Yang Dao Master might use his spirit to reincarnate. As soon as the spirit entered the body of Hao Yang Dao Master, Zhu Yi felt as if he had entered a sea of starlight. A face was looming. It was Hao Yang Dao Master. Now this Hao Yang golden body was a bit like Dao Master Hao Yang Dao Master, who cultivated martial arts by himself. He entered the state of thoughtless tranquility and was ignorant like a newborn baby. But he was constantly being guided to comprehend the innate great way. Zhu Yi's spirit merged with it. His mind was a little confused and he was almost assimilated. But Zhu Yi guarded his mind and operated the Taoism method of heavenly virtue scripture to refine the Taoism gist of trueness left by Dao Master Hao Yang Dao Master in the body. I have to thank the core illusion of Yingzhou Spirit Mountain. Zhu Yi understood. At this moment, he was the same as when he turned the starlight into a body in the illusion, but his spirit and Hao Yang golden body were more closely integrated. This is a martial arts doppelganger. I should refine it with my own essence blood. After splitting his spirit, Zhu Yi's spirit returned to his body, and he dripped his essence blood on the forehead of Hao Yang golden body. The golden Buddha light on the surface of Hao Yang golden body was like a film. It completely shattered, and a tall body was revealed. His facial features were no longer that of Hao Yang Dao Master. Instead, he looked similar to Zhu Yi. Zhu Yi and his Hao Yang doppelganger smiled at the same time. Once the refinement was complete, with his original late nascent soul cultivation base, he would truly possess an avatar of a martial arts expert whose primordial soul had returned to the emptiness stage. Zhu Yi's spirit completely merged with Hao Yang golden body. He only felt that this body seemed to have endless power. The power of his qi and blood was completely reborn. It did not make people feel hot. It was like facing the sun or a volcano. Instead, it was like facing the vast starry sky. The acupoints all over his body seemed to have penetrated through Yingzhou Spirit Mountain and the barrier of Yinghai World. They were connected with the stars in the sky. The understanding of the great Tao of heaven and earth of a primordial spirit-level powerhouse was all fed back to Zhu Yi through his spirit. He had mastered some of them before, and he felt that he had benefited a lot from some of them. With the help of this Hao Yang doppelganger, I can clearly feel that my true body is one step closer to the primordial spirit level. It's a pity that although I used my own power to refine this doppelganger, my spirit had also entered the thoughtless tranquility state. It had completely merged with Hao Yang Dao Master's martial arts' true meaning. So this martial arts doppelganger could only use the Astro Sovereign's martial arts and my own power. Although it would not have a conflict with my spirit like in the illusion, and cause the starlight doppelganger to collapse, it could not fully exert the power of the power. But it's enough. Zhu Yi's Hao Yang doppelganger let out a long roar. Its majestic power was shocking. Zhu Yi released the cosmic cycle and the golden nirvana bridge. Hao Yang's doppelganger's power of qi and blood exploded. It directly turned into a ray of starlight and rushed out, pouncing towards King Jingfeng Shirlin. Shirlin had heard about the battle between Zhu Yi and Xiao Qingqing from Shi Xingyun and Dao Master Chang Lu. Seeing that Zhu Yi was focused on defense, he didn't look down on him. Instead, he became more cautious. He didn't get entangled with Zhu Yi and tried to break Zhu Yi's defense by force. Instead, he gave up on Zhu Yi and focused on refining the white jade pillar. Lin also knew what the crux of the problem was. As long as he refined this Dharma treasure embryo of creation, Zhu Yi wouldn't be able to do anything to him. The black water was like a hot knife cutting through butter. It kept washing the light and dark characters off the white jade pillar. The black water went all the way up. When it was only one step away from the top of the white jade pillar, Zhu Yi suddenly dropped his defense. A ray of light that looked like a meteor pounced towards Lin. Feeling the majestic power, Lin's eyelids twitched. Where did this second-tier primordial spirit cultivator come from? Chapter 790. Like a meteor falling to the ground, Zhu Yi's vast young avatar hurriedly threw himself at Jingfang Wang's stone forest. With a palm strike, a buzzing sound came from the belly of the mountain. The entire space was blown apart by this palm strike. Lin was a bit surprised. Astro King's martial arts, Heavenly City Boundary Godly Palm. Second level of primordial spirit returning to emptiness stage, appearing in Ing Si. You are Hao Yang Tao Master Wang Hao. You are not dead. But soon he saw the face of the newcomer clearly, and it was 80% similar to Zhu Yi. You made Hao Yang Tao Master's body into your doppelganger? Although Lin knew that Zhu Yi's divine soul power and supernatural power couldn't be measured by the standard of the ordinary Yuanying late-stage cultivators, he was still shocked when he saw that Zhu Yi could make a doppelganger with the cultivation of the second level of primordial spirit realm, before he reached the primordial spirit realm. Although it seemed that he could only use the Astro King's martial arts of Hao Yang Tao Master, his cultivation power was almost equal to that of Hao Yang Tao Master, and he was not inferior to Monk De Kong in his peak state. Lin's void-returning Dharma body chanted a spell, and layers of black water turned into a black dragon in front of him, which rushed towards Zhu Yi's Hao Yang doppelganger. However, its head was smashed by Hao Yang's doppelganger with one palm. Then the doppelganger's hands turned into claws and grabbed the dragon's body, tearing it into several pieces. On the other side, Zhu Yi Tao Master used the four symbols Great Circle formation, and the circle immediately wrapped around the white jade pillar, firmly blocking the black water that almost covered the entire white jade pillar, and stopped it from spreading upward. At this moment, the black water was only a millimeter away from the top of the white jade pillar. But this millimeter was so close that it couldn't be crossed. Lin wanted to take on the attacks of Hao Yang's doppelganger, and refine the white jade pillar first. At that time, even if Zhu Yi and Hao Yang's doppelganger attacked him together, he would not be afraid. However, he did not expect that Hao Yang's doppelganger was too fierce. If he dared to divert his attention to the white jade pillar, Hao Yang's doppelganger would quickly close in on him. Once Hao Yang's doppelganger got close to him, Lin would truly be in danger. This was an opponent that he might not be able to defeat even if he gave it his all. With a thought, Lin hurriedly summoned the Black River Sword back. However, he suddenly realized that there was no response from the Black River Sword. Other than a faint telepathic connection, there was no other response. Looking over, he saw that the Black River Sword was currently sealed in the great barrier of light and darkness formed by the eternal night devil steel and the infinite light Bodhi heart lamp. It was unable to move. Originally, the eternal night devil steel and the infinite light Bodhi heart lamp had teamed up to fight against the Black River Sword. Even though it was 2 against 1, they were still in a difficult situation. They could only barely suppress the Black River Sword and buy some time. But now, the Black River Sword was completely suppressed by these 2 treasures. It had completely lost its previous monstrous aura. King Jingfang, although I have yet to form a primordial soul, this Hao Yang clone is a true primordial soul returning to Void Realm Cultivator. Zhu Yi smiled. Junior's Hao Yang clone can use the eternal night devil steel and the infinite light Bodhi heart lamp to unleash their full power. Either one of them is not inferior to your Black River Sword. Lin's heart instantly sank. He understood that after Zhu Yi cultivated Hao Yang's clone, not only did he have a clone at the second tier of the primordial soul realm, but even his powerful Dharma treasures could be put to good use. The increase in his overall strength was unimaginable. When he thought of this, Lin immediately calmed down and focused all his attention on fighting Hao Yang's clone. He didn't dare to be distracted anymore. After Zhu Yi used Hao Yang's clone to suppress Shilin, his main body began to refine the white jade pillar. The tables had turned. Previously, Shilin's black mystic water had wiped out Zhu Yi's light and darkness characters. Now it was Zhu Yi's turn to clean up his black mystic water. However, Shilin's black mystic water was truly strange and profound. The black water shimmered with light, and wherever the light shone, the black water would not budge. Even Zhu Yi found it difficult to deal with. Have you refined the eternal light's concept into your black mystic water dermic powers? Zhu Yi shook his head and waved his hand to scatter a sand-like light spot. It was the divine instant sand. He used the instant true intent to melt away Shilin's eternal light. Upon seeing the divine instant sand, Shilin sighed. The last hope in his heart had been severed. He wasn't Immortal Dragon City. The Immortal Dragon City wouldn't be restrained by the divine instant sand, but the eternal light he comprehended from Immortal Dragon City would be melted away by the divine instant sand. The black mystic water on the white jade pillar kept receding as the light and darkness characters quickly covered the white jade pillar. When the light and darkness characters covered the white jade pillar, be it Zhu Yi or Shilin, they could sense that the entire Immortal Abode continent, or even the entire world, was quaking. Zhu Yi vaguely sensed that his thoughts and consciousness seemed to fuse with the creation universe. It was extremely grand and vast. However, the powerful energy fluctuation had completely broken through the barrier of the Immortal Abode continent and exposed itself to the world. Lin Feng's clone of the Divine God of Battle had already landed on the Immortal Abode continent. He was about to refine the Immortal Mountain when he suddenly sensed the magnificent aura and the complete creation intent contained within it. He immediately came to a realization. The embryo of a creation artifact, the Immortal Abode continent. No, it's the embryo of a creation artifact that was nurtured by the Immortal Abode continent. As a master, Lin Feng is naturally the person who is most familiar with his disciple. At the first moment, he was already able to distinguish through the consciousness aura on the magic treasure embryo that it was Zhu Yi's initial refinement of this treasure that caused such a large commotion. Zhu Yi knew what he was doing. His clone of Hao Yang was used to suppress Shilin. After all, his main body had yet to achieve the nascent soul realm. Therefore, he did not blindly refine the embryo, as he was afraid that it would be ruined. He only had a basic control over it, but that alone was enough for him to activate the white jade pillar and clear the Immortal Mountain. Be it Shilin, Monk De Kong, Sword Venerable Tidehark, or Dao Venerable Changlu, none of them could stop it. Liang Pan and Shiryu also sensed the changes in the Immortal Mountain at the same time. They were also shocked. It's actually the embryo of a creation artifact. Could it be that the strange balance formed by the nameless ancient formation and the Immortal Abode continent triggered the power of the Immortal Abode continent to nurture such a rare treasure? Shiryu's face was blocked by the curtain of beads hanging from the crown. For a moment it was a little dark and unclear. The Immortal Dragon City turned into a seemingly endless light dragon that swam in the void. Giving up the Immortal Abode continent in exchange for Lin Feng to suppress the Great Zhou Empire and obtain the vast territory and resources in the east of the Great Zhou Empire was Shiryu's plan. At the same time, it was also his bottom line. However, with the sudden appearance of a creation artifact embryo, Shiryu had to adapt and change his plan. It was not that greed had blinded his rationality, but the weights on both sides of the scale had changed from balance to unbalance, far exceeding his expectations. Emperor Liang Pan's expression was calm as usual, as if he was not worried at all about the sudden invasion of the Great Qin Empire on the divine land outside the Immortal Abode continent. Shiryu, there is actually no contradiction between being aggressive and scheming, Liang Pan said confidently. Liang Pan was as steady as Mount Tai. He said confidently, the key is strength. With sufficient strength, one can deal with all sorts of changes. Shiryu's expression did not change. He used a secret treasure to contact the Great Qin Empire's experts outside the Immortal Abode continent. On the Divine Land, at the eastern border of the Great Qin Empire, which was also the western border of the Great Zhou Empire, a 5-colored golden dragon circled in the sky. In the end, it turned into an old man in an official robe. He looked at the layers of clouds in the sky of the Great Zhou Empire with a gloomy expression. The clouds in the sky changed shape and gradually revealed the facial features of a woman. She looked like an adult woman, but also like a little girl who had not grown up yet. The face formed by the clouds occupied half of the sky in the east. It looked at the old man in the official robe and said with a smile, "King Gunyang, please return." The old man in the official robe was silent. At this moment, Shi Yu's message came again. The old man in the official robe said simply, "Yun Yuanjin has come." After that, the old man in the official robe did not say anything else. Shi Yu did not continue asking, but they both knew that the original plan was no longer feasible. Stonefeather looked towards the Grand Imperial Palace and Liang Pan. Even though Yin Yuanjin is Yan Mingyue's master, in this kind of matter, Yin Yuanjin definitely has his own judgment. "What kind of deal did you make with the Void Temple?" Liang Pan replied calmly, "No deal. Half of it is a favor from Fairy Yan, and the other half is, as you said, Yin Yuanjin's own decision." Shi Yu nodded. Taishu Temple wants to keep the Great Zhou dynasty. It doesn't want you to be weakened too much. If you hadn't lost Fangzhong Immortal Mountain, Yin Yuanjin might not have made a move. After the Battle of West Hill City, the order in the cultivation world that Taishu Temple had originally led was broken by Lin Feng and the others. Xianmen Tianzong, the Great Qin Dynasty, the Great Zhou Dynasty, the Purple Sky Path, the Northern Militant Royal Court, and other factions joined forces to oppose Taishu Temple. However, this faction was naturally not completely united. There were many conflicts between the Great Qin and the Great Zhou, and the relationship between Xianmen Tianzong and the Great Zhou was worsening. Taishu Temple wanted to set things right and return everything to the situation before the Battle of West Hill City, so they naturally had many arrangements. This time, due to other reasons, Taishu Temple did not participate in the fight for the appearance of the three mountains of Yinghai, but they were always paying attention. As long as the three mountains did not fall into the hands of the demon race, Taishu Temple would not mind too much. However, when necessary, they would help the Great Zhou dynasty, which was increasingly at odds with the Great Qin dynasty and Xianmen Tianzong, so as to maintain the conflict between the opposing factions. This was naturally a matter of course. If the Great Zhou dynasty gained a lot from the three mountains of Yinghai and earned a lot, then Taishu Temple would definitely help the Great Qin dynasty according to the specific situation, or even Xianmen Tianzong who had led the fight against them. The purpose was set and the methods could be changed according to the situation. Whether they were friend or foe depended on the specific situation. It was precisely because Taishu Temple had this plan that Yin Yuanjin accepted Yan Mingyue's invitation to make a move. He had a good reason to do so, and the other big shots of Taishu Temple also tacitly agreed. However, helping the Great Zhou dynasty solve the crisis of the Divine Land was also the limit. The rest would depend on the Great Zhou dynasty's own ability. Lin Feng stood at the peak of Jade Capital Mountain, but he still looked calm. He seemed to turn a blind eye to the abnormal movements of Stonefeather and the Immortal Dragon City. He smiled slightly. "Fellow Shi, back then in West Hill City, I helped you refine the Immortal Dragon City with the Heaven Punishing Sword, and you also gave me the Eternal Glory. You and I sat down and discussed Tao, and we both benefited greatly. Since we have some free time today, why don't you exchange Tao with me again?" As he spoke, Lin Feng stretched out his left hand, and a spot of light flickered on the tip of his index finger. It was fleeting, and it lit up in the blink of an eye, constantly appearing and disappearing, showing the mysterious concept of time changing in an instant. Chapter 791. Light flickered on Lin Feng's fingertips as he said calmly with a smile. The Celeritas Sword Sect's instantaneous flowing light sword Dao has a deep understanding of the true meaning of the instantaneous change of time. However, there are still some shortcomings. I've studied the instantaneous divine sand and verified it with the eternal radiance, and I've gained some insights. Are you interested in sharing with me, fellow Shi? Previously, the Great Qin dynasty was prepared to join forces with Xianmen Tianzong to fight for Yingzhou Mountain. However, because there was only one mountain, it was difficult to distribute the benefits. Moreover, Lin Feng had a better idea, so they did not reach an agreement in the end. However, now that they had a creation treasure embryo, the situation was completely different. The Great Qin dynasty no longer had a chance at the Divine Land. Even if Stonefeather immediately drove the Immortal Dragon City back to reinforce them, it would be useless. Taishu Temple did not only have Yin Yuanjin. Yan Mingyue and Yin Yuanjin's actions this time were in line with the overall thinking of the conservative faction of Taishu Temple. Therefore, if there was a need, they could borrow more power. However, because of their own reasons, Taishu Temple would not take the initiative to attack. Under such circumstances, the Great Qin dynasty's target would definitely return to Yingzhou. Lin Feng had sufficient reason to believe that the Great Qin dynasty's King Ruoyang, Shizong Mao, and the others, who were originally attacking the Great Zhou, were most likely rushing over to Yingzhou. Given that Stonefeather had always been steady, the Great Qin dynasty's other Dao integration realm expert, Nanming monarch Shizongtang, would most likely remain in West Hill City. However, it was hard to say. For the Great Qin dynasty, the most ideal outcome would be to join forces with Xianmen Tianzong to chase the Great Zhou dynasty away. Yingzhou Mountain and the White Jade Pillar would each be won. It would be even better if they could heavily injure the Great Zhou dynasty. But for Lin Feng, he was determined to obtain both the Yingzhou Immortal Mountain and the White Jade Pillar this time. However, this kind of behavior of monopolizing everything and taking all the benefits by himself was naturally a very taboo thing. Making enemies with the entire world and challenging the entire world with the strength of one family was indeed very satisfying and domineering. However, putting aside the question of whether he had the ability to do so, even if he had the ability, if it wasn't really necessary, Lin Feng didn't intend to do so at all, because it was too tiring. He could obviously achieve his goal more easily, but he had to increase the difficulty. Perhaps some people would be happy to do such a thing, but Lin Feng wasn't interested. He preferred to constantly reduce the difficulty of doing things. Under the situation where there were no conflicts of principle, he would unite the majority. He would have more friends and fewer enemies, and everything would naturally fall into place. This time, he planned to devour the Yingzhou Immortal Mountain and the Creation Dharma treasure embryo, so he naturally had to pay a price. Lin Feng's newly forged Instance Radiance was the price he offered. In reality, 3 years ago in the Great Thousand World, after the Immortal Dragon City had been completely refined, the Qin Emperor Stonefeather had already realized the importance of the Instance Radiance. The rules set by the Taishu Temple no longer existed. If it wasn't for the changes in Tianhuang Vast Land, which brought pressure to the human race experts, there would have been some big fish eating small fish, and small fish eating shrimps in the Divine Land. For example, the Great Qin dynasty had their eyes on the Celeritas Sword Sect's Sword Dao. However, after the Battle of West Hill City, the Celeritas Sword Sect was already very close to Xianmen Tianzong. There was pressure from the demon race on the outside, and Xianmen Tianzong's protection on the inside, so it wasn't convenient for the Great Qin dynasty to take it by force. Moreover, as Lin Feng had said, the Celeritas Sword Sect's instant flowing light Sword Dao was still a little lacking from the Great Qin dynasty's needs. Therefore, the Great Qin dynasty's thoughts had gradually faded. Not long ago, Lin Feng had combined the power of Yujing Mountain and figured out the Celeritas Sword Sect's instant divine sand, and finally refined the Instance Radiance that was opposite to the Eternal Radiance. Although it was still in its embryonic form, and was still immature compared to the Immortal Dragon City's Eternal Radiance, in terms of power, it was enough to attract the attention of the Qin Emperor Stonefeather. The Great Qin dynasty had figured out the Eternal Radiance for a long time, and had a lot of understanding of the power of time. However, they were still unable to crack the Instance secret. They were actually just short of an epiphany. After obtaining Lin Feng's Instance Radiance, they didn't need to intentionally imitate it. Under the analogy, the path in front of them was immediately clear. If the Immortal Dragon City obtained the Instance Radiance, their power would definitely increase, and it would be a huge increase. Standing on the Immortal Dragon City, Stonefeather gave a faint smile. At his and Lin Feng's level, a simple hint would be enough for them to form a tacit understanding. In the current situation, it was impossible for the Great Qin dynasty to cooperate with the Great Zhou dynasty. Although there were only Emperor Zhou, Liangpan, and the Grand Imperial Palace, Zhu Honggu and the Great Wheel of Heavens were already on the way and would arrive soon. If the three great creation treasures worked together, they might be able to defeat Lin Feng. However, in the following battle between Zhou and Qin, the greatest benefits would most likely fall into the hands of the Great Zhou dynasty, who had mobilized their entire nation for this trip to the Yangtze. Compared to Xianmen Tianzong, this was even more unacceptable for Great Qin. However, if all the benefits were taken by Xianmen Tianzong, then Stonefeather naturally wouldn't agree. Previously, he had manipulated the Immortal Dragon City's abnormal movements to see how Lin Feng would react. At the level of Lin Feng, Stonefeather, and Liang Pan, apart from irreconcilable enmity, there were no eternal friends or enemies. There were only eternal benefits. As long as you had a certain amount of bargaining chips in hand, you could make a corresponding proposition and play your own little calculations. As for whether or not you could succeed and how much you could gain, it all depended on whose means were more brilliant and whose bargaining chips were more abundant. More accurately speaking, even if they had irreconcilable enmity, it wouldn't stop them from cooperating with each other to a certain extent at certain times. However, the enmity between Great Qin and Great Zhou was too deep, and they seriously didn't trust each other. Unless it was absolutely necessary, they wouldn't work together. If there was a better choice, Stonefeather wouldn't work together with Great Zhou. Lin Feng was also very clear about this, so he directly offered a price. For Lin Feng, Stonefeather, and the others, it was best for both sides to work together. You've made a good judgment. You've made a condition that I can't refuse. Stonefeather looked down at Yingzhou Celestial Mountain. Sensing the creation aura of the white jade pillar in the belly of the mountain, he slowly shook his head. Lin Feng didn't lose anything by giving him instant radiance. It could only be said that he shared instant radiance. However, Yingzhou Celestial Mountain and the white jade pillar had truly fallen into Xianmen Tianzong's hands. After the matter at Yingzhou Celestial Mountain was over, there would still be other exchanges between Xianmen Tianzong and Great Qin dynasty. With Lin Feng's temperament, he would most likely give Great Qin preferential treatment in some resource exchanges and continue to compensate. However, since Yingzhou Celestial Mountain and the white jade pillar were in his pocket, Lin Feng definitely wouldn't hand them over. However, for Great Qin, obtaining instant radiance made this trip to Yingzhou Celestial Mountain worth it. With both eternal radiance and instant radiance, Immortal Dragon City could raise the concept of time power to a whole new level and create new magic powers. It might not be inferior to Yujing Mountain's Celestial Pole Cosmic Light. However, with both Yingzhou Celestial Mountain and the White Jade Pillar, Xianmen Tianzong's strength would increase even more. However, this was currently a better choice for Great Qin Dynasty, and was better than Great Zhou Dynasty. Moreover, if Xianmen Tianzong and Great Qin Dynasty worked together, Great Zhou Dynasty might not just lose Fangzhong Celestial Mountain in this trip to Yingzhou Celestial Mountain. Lin Feng flicked his finger, and instant radiance landed on Immortal Dragon City in the distance. Stonefeather put away instant radiance, and the Immortal Dragon City instantly rippled as if it was covered with a layer of water. The color on the boundless city walls gradually disappeared, and it became extremely empty. However, it didn't seem pale and powerless. Instead, it revealed an even more profound concept of power, as if a river of time was surging forward. At the same time, the Grand Imperial Palace, which had been frozen by the celestial pole cosmic light, and was staggering, suddenly exploded with a shocking power. Boundless light spread out, and the purplish gold color disappeared, leaving behind only the purest and most primitive light. In this light, one could vaguely see a huge mass of chaotic aura. It was extremely unstable, constantly shaking and distorting. From it came a powerful concept of power that made Lin Feng and Stonefeather turn their heads. In the next instant, a huge crack suddenly appeared in the center of the mass of chaotic aura. The moment this crack appeared, the majestic force seemed to want to tear the major thousand world into two. The entire Yingzhou Sea was shaking, and even the creation of the major thousand world outside seemed to be shaking. The terrifying power that could tear the world actually tore the celestial pole cosmic light apart. Lin Feng and Stonefeather stared at that crack and said in unison, "Emperor Heaven splitting technique." During the end of the primordial era, the human race rose up and fought against the demon race. Starting from the first human emperor, Emperor Shi Huang, they fought continuously. The war lasted for many years, and human experts were born one after another and then fell. It was only until the Taishu Taoist and the Grand Emperor duo rose up and fought a great battle with the demon race that the demon race's rule over the human race was completely ended. That was truly an earth-shattering battle. The heaven primordial world that was originally one was directly split into two, turning into the desolate vast land and the divine land. The human race and the demon race each occupied one side. As a result, the Grand Emperor became the last human emperor of the primordial era. At the same time, he was also the first human emperor of the primordial era. Different from Lin Feng's primordial heaven-splitting technique, he deduced the changes of creation himself. Back then, the splitting of heaven and earth was personally caused by the Tai Huang Yu Share. He personally witnessed everything that happened, comprehending the powerful concept of creation and destruction within, and finally comprehending and creating his own strongest divine ability, the extreme Emperor Heaven-splitting technique. Compared to the profoundness and grandeur of Lin Feng's primordial heaven-splitting technique, the Grand Emperor Heaven-splitting technique was more domineering. Its destructive power was more direct and intense. Without waiting for Lin Feng and Stonefeather to come to an agreement, Liang Pan did not plan to stay after seeing Lin Feng's instant of radiance. He could only give Stonefeather the White Jade Pillar. He could not give both the White Jade Pillar and Yingzhou Mountain to Great Qin. The instant of radiance could improve the immortal Dragon City. Although its value was slightly lower than the White Jade Pillar, there was no need for Emperor Stonefeather to choose between seeking a win-win situation with Xianmen Tianzong or the Great Zhou Empire. With the Great Qin Empire and Xianmen Tianzong working together, before Zhu Hongwu and the Great Celestial Wheel arrived, Liang Pan and the Grand Emperor Palace were already in a dangerous situation. If Lin Feng were finding Yingzhou Mountain in a short time, Liang Pan would be in even more danger. Therefore, even though Liang Pan's heart was bleeding as he looked at Yingzhou Mountain, he did not hesitate and did not hold back anymore. Even if he had to pay a price, he had to quickly leave this dangerous place. Slowly, Lin Feng said, "It is expected that the Grand Emperor Palace has inherited the Grand Emperor Heaven-splitting technique. However, Liang Pan, using the Grand Emperor Heaven-splitting technique, which has not fully recovered, is like drinking poison to quench one's thirst. Not only will you not be able to unleash the full power of the Grand Emperor Heaven-splitting technique, but you will also injure the Grand Emperor Heaven-splitting technique." However, so what if it is the Grand Emperor Heaven-splitting technique? Lin Feng formed hand seals with both hands and brought them together. Purple qi flowed on Yujing Mountain, and the leaves of the mysterious sky treasure tree swayed. The cosmic light of the extreme celestial pole that had been shattered healed once again. Like flowing water, it once again enveloped the Grand Emperor Palace. Furthermore, it was even more powerful than before. Liang Pan had been holding back. In order to guard against Stonefeather and the immortal Dragon City, how could Lin Feng use his full power? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.